Welcome everybody to today's stream. Hello, hello. And we have some exciting news as well in today's stream. So that's already something new, I would say. That's already something new. Welcome, Goro. Welcome. Hope you all had a nice week and have now a nice weekend. And let's see what we can do today on stream, and hopefully we have some fun. And let's jump straight in. Welcome. And as usual, if you have any discussions, any questions, anything, like any comments, any feedback, let me know. I'm always happy to talk about it, especially with the balance apocalypse, the balance nerf, the balance, like whatever it's coming up. And I think it's the 14th of April or something like that. But yeah, that will be crazy. Very crazy. Like one of the most controversial patches probably in the last year when it comes to balance specifically. We will have to see. So let's see what I'm here supposed to be. Okay, I guess I'm Alacrity Heal. What do we want to play? Alacrity Heal. What is like a good thing? The hammer's coming. Don't know anything about it. What's going on? So, Les, welcome to the stream first of all. And the Nerf hammer is like, I was also surprised. They released, shadow dropped almost, a preview of the balance changes coming in 3 weeks, something like that. And this is pretty crazy because the changes are really big in terms of how they impact the DPS. So the overall patch is, in my opinion, just to summarize it, not as interesting, but the PvE balance is pretty overall the general damage numbers goes down by 5 to 10 to 15. I don't know, we have to see what the exact numbers are, but that will be a big nerf. So yeah, welcome Boring Gang, welcome. A heal mechanic. Yeah, I mean, we can play that as well. I have to be honest, I don't really like playing Mechanist in Alacrity Heal anymore. I think it's not as good anymore. I think it's the only Alacrity Healer that I would say is a bit down. You know, I could play Scourge, I could play Luminary, I could play Paragon. I think they are all a bit better nowadays. I play now Chrono because I want to show that Chronomancer is actually still very good as a healer. But we can switch it up after this, I guess. We can also play something, I guess, more aggressive here. Alacrity. No, I don't have any Alacrity Celestial setup here. That's fine. Viva, yeah, Viva. That is, Alpharon, that's actually crazy to me. That they also nerf stuff down. That is of course, if they push down all the numbers by 10%, you have to nerf everything. Really everything. You cannot say this is not something that we want to nerf. But, and that's for me the crazy part, Viva, they even nerf Herald, it's crazy. All the specs that I would say, even Vindicator is affected. All the specs that I would say are actually somewhat, I don't want to say underpowered, but they are somewhat lacking. That is crazy. Am I actually Alacrity Heal? Yeah, okay. I was so scared for a second that I forgot to switch the trade again. It's the most difficult thing on Chronomancer, having the right trade equipped. Yeah, heard a lot of people talking about damage just being too high in general. Yeah, exactly. So this is the balance patch that should address this. Yeah, this balance patch should address this issue that a lot of veterans see in the game, that the balance is just increasing, and they slowly, or pretty much in one step, decrease it to a level that was somewhat years ago. Yeah, it was something like that. Maybe before Visions of Eternity. Who knows? We will see the actual numbers when we get the patch then. But I would say this is surprising on one side. On the other side, I think it's necessary. But I will go over all the changes after this stream is up for a bit, so that we have all the people that want to actually watch me up as well and ready to go. But yeah, I think this is a patch that is definitely necessary. But if they should do it exactly like that, yeah, that's another question, I would say. That's another question. Wait. Yeah. I think everything in tops Heal Mechanist. Yeah, I think Heal Mechanist, that's the sad part. I think Heal Mechanist was extremely good when End of Dragons released. And then Heal Mechanist got nerfed, and so many times that in the end, it's now below almost everything else. And that's crazy to me because it has a really good package. It really does. The problem is that it's just not living up to all the buffs that the other specs got. And I think that's, for example, a thing that I miss in this balance patch is like addressing stuff that is underperforming. In this whole patch, I would say there is not a single buff. This is a nerf patch. And I think that's not necessarily bad if you would also address a little bit of the, so to say, very underused specs or a little bit underperforming specs. And that's not in there, in my opinion. And I think that's a bit sad for sure. Yeah. This is a random LFG group, yeah. Nothing special. Just what I found, so to say, right now. It's what I usually do. I typically don't have any statics or something. At least not anymore. I'm just happy to see Quickness Cataline being pushed down to Power Quickness Herald. Yeah, I mean, that is crazy to me. I'm not happy about this change. I think that is crazy because this is not only a DPS nerf to Quickness Catalyst, but it's also like, I think it's almost impossible to play Quickness Catalyst now after the patch with the big nerfs to the boon duration. But we will get to the exact numbers and stuff like that. But the numbers are insane for Quickness Catalyst. They are absolutely insane how low they are. You need so much boon duration to upkeep 100%. And I think in a lot of cases, you will probably not even be able to do so. It's crazy. It's really, really, really like interesting that they do that. Yeah, we will talk about it in detail when we get to the patch notes. But yeah, some of the changes, I'm not totally sure if they are necessary like that. According to SC, the top bench after the patch will be the same as June 2024 numbers, that is pre-Chanterval's numbers. I mean, if that is true and if this comes to the actual game, I think that's good. I think that's good for me. I think the numbers before Chanterval's were definitely better than the numbers are now. They are still higher than a lot of time, like End of Dragons and Path of Fire, the numbers were even lower. But I guess it's better to have like a little bit like pushback than none at all. Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah, there are some nerfs for the specs in PvP and World vs. World as well, but you can probably count them on one, maximum two hands. It's really not a lot of changes that are to PvP and World vs. World. It's mostly a PvE nerf patch for damage. This is if you would summarize the actual changes to the meta, like the actual changes. So if, for example, that you change now, the meta is changing from typically you play, I don't know, like a Troubadour healer in World vs. World, and now it shifts to something crazy like, I don't know, Mirage healer. Not happening, but I'm just saying this would be counted as a change for me. But if you count the actual changes, there are not that many, because it's just like you tune down everything, then in the end the meta stays exactly the same, just with lower numbers. It's a bit crazy to me, yeah. Bit crazy in that regard. But, I mean, that's how it goes, I guess. That's how it goes. Welcome, Kami, welcome. So you can type !mouse in the chat, then you will get the answer to your question, because I have a video about how to set this up. In the end, it's just a Guild Wars 2 add-on that I use here for making my mouse cursor always show up in this blue circle and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, Troubadour is also getting like big nerfs in World vs. World. In general, World vs. World is probably getting more like changes than PvP for sure. Exactly, it places exactly where my cursor is, and it's really nice because the normal mouse cursor, if I move, it goes away. You see, my in-game mouse cursor is now not here anymore, so the blue mouse cursor actually shows the actual position even if I have, so to say, both mouse buttons hold down. So this is actually, I think, a big improvement. Otherwise, you might lose the mouse very, very easily. And I think that's an issue that a lot of players, even veterans, have in the game. So I think that's pretty good that this add-on makes it possible to see the mouse cursor all the time. Yeah. I wonder if they will ditch the timers for the normal Wing 8 and normal Keller. That is very interesting. Like, also the infallible titles. You know, the people were struggling with the current numbers to get the infallible titles, because that's a really tough like challenge. It's a speed run while not being able to get down and stuff like that. It's actually quite challenging. And the numbers there, yeah, I think they're not reachable after the nerfs, so I think they have to adjust it, I guess. But who knows, you know, I don't know what they have planned. Also, the leaderboards, in my opinion, should be reset, because you will never get the numbers like of the speedrunning for the challenge modes anymore, because it's just like straight up impossible how can you do like the same DPS that you did before if you have a 10% damage nerf to you? That's like, what? Yeah. Welcome, Taste. Welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing fine. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Yeah, okay, so Roy has confirmed the numbers. That's good, that's good. I did not know that. That's very good to hear, but we will have to see how much they adjusted. If it's now way easier, if it's harder, we will have to see. But I think it's good that they're actually on that. That's very good. Nice. Roy is on top of that. I just hope that they also reset the leaderboards, because patches like this actually affect the leaderboard, I would say, in a big way. But yeah. I find Spear Elementalist hard because everything is a ground AoE, so it takes 2 buttons to press. Is there a way to make it so that when you press the skill, it autocasts? So that is, yeah, there is a thing that you can help you. It's here in the settings. If you scroll down, I will show you after this. Let me first get the boons up, otherwise my group will be very sad. So boons up, and there is a setting that helps you there. It's a really good setting. I use it all the time, so you never see on my screen where I cast my stuff. You know, I don't have this AoE, so to say, the bar where you see this is casting the well on this attack on this spot. This is because I have instant cast enabled, so you only have to press the attack once and it instantly casts. You can find a middle ground there as well. So for example, you can go and it casts after releasing the button. So there are two ways to do that. Yeah. I will show you the setting in a second after this boss is dead, so my group doesn't wipe because the healer is like reading chat. Don't want to have that here on stream. Never want to have that, even off stream. So that's that. Nice. Very good wisp management. I like it. I like it. Some stability just to make sure that no one gets the seed here, and it should be good. There we go. So the setting is here when you scroll down, ground targeting and then instant. That's what I have enabled, and you have probably normal enabled because that's the default setting. And if you go to fast with range indicator, that's so to say the middle ground. I would say if you get more experience, one of those should be enabled. Yeah. Condi DPS is getting nerfed, I would say as well. Yeah. In general, they nerf everything. Pretty much across the board, yeah. Welcome, Pasu, welcome. Your videos have been very helpful to me as a returning player. Nice, glad to hear that. More to come. Hopefully you enjoy the game even more. Very good, very good. No, everything is getting nerfed. Power, quickness, alacrity, condi, everything is like getting a nerf, yeah. Nothing is, so to say, staying as it is, I would say, from the damage numbers. If it's above a certain number, I would say. Yeah. I'm sure the people gunning for Infallible will rush completely before the nerfs. I don't know. I think it might be easier after the nerfs. It depends how much they adjusted. We have to see. I think they more rush for all-time records because now you have, like, for example, Veil Guardian record. The so to say restricted all-time record will never be broken after this. Like, never ever, because the numbers are like just not reachable anymore. Yeah. Welcome, Hype. Welcome, welcome. How bad is the nerfs in your opinion? So I think it's not bad in general. It's just like the patch could be argued is bad, but the nerfs itself, I think they are actually like they are necessary. So yeah, we will talk about all the changes in very much detail after we get some more time has passed. I don't want to stall for too long, but a little bit, so that everyone that wants to watch me live on stream can actually hear my opinion there. Yeah, maybe it's just 15 to 10 seconds extra. That would be crazy though. If that would never be enough for getting Infallible. I hope they actually know what they're doing. I think Roy is actually pretty much on top of the rewards and the numbers and times and stuff. I think he's one of the more active like listeners to the community, I would say, which is really good. You need a balanced dev or a reward dev listening to the community. That's what we need, and I think Roy is actually doing a good job there. Yeah. Will you have a lot of work or head adjusting the builds? I think actually I might just make pinned comments for all my videos, yeah, where I say the actual number is now only this and that, because I don't think we have to adjust a lot of builds. Like the builds typically stay the same. The only thing that changes is the end number, but you will not have to change all your builds typically. Like if you just tune down the damage by 10%, that doesn't change any builds. It's just affecting how much DPS you do in the end. So I think it's quite likely that I just have to like address that in a pinned comment or something. I hope that's the case. Would be very sad if I had to redo all my, I don't know, 200 build guides at this point or something. That would be not very nice. That's to say the least. Yeah. Maybe Scourge rises? I have no clue though. I would be very interested to see how the numbers change. Maybe Scourge is coming back. Who knows? Who knows? Okay, when is the CC happening? I guess not. Global nerf is a good thing for me. Numbers are too high actually. Yeah, I'm with you there. I think the global nerf in general is not a bad thing. The problem is that there is nothing else. That's for me the problem. It's like mostly it's just numbers changes. There is not a real rework or buff to anything that is underpowered. I think that's a bit sad. But more on that in a bit, yeah. So, next one, very good. How's Virtuoso for 101? Pretty good. Pretty good. It's not the best 101 spec in PvP and World vs. World, but it has a lot of like defenses and a lot of burst damage, which makes it really like a skilled spec to 101. So I think it's a decent spec. Yeah. Yeah, I try to update my tier lists, which is typically what I try to keep up a bit more because that's easier. You know, I can make a tier list every couple of months when the balance changes. I cannot update all my like 100 to 200 build guides every time there is a new balance patch. That is just like not feasible. But the tier list I will definitely keep updated. However, like I said, if just everything gets tuned down by 10%, the meta shifts like 0%. Nothing shifts because if everything gets hit by 10%, just like on paper, then that means that everything is exactly where it was before, just lower a bit. And that's what's somewhat supposed to happen. So that's why I would say seems rather a rather boring patch in that regard. So I don't have to readjust all my tier lists for now. I'll have to see if that's the case. Maybe I'm misreading the situation there. But for now, I think that's how it looks like. Just arrived, what's happening? General nerfing coming? Yes, they listened to the veteran community that the damage numbers are just way too high, and they will do a big nerf in 3 weeks rather. So in like mid of April, there will be a big balance patch that nerfs almost like everything. I would say every DPS spec, everything that does some damage in PvE will get I don't know, 10% number nerf. Yeah, nothing like functional, just numbers down. And I think that's definitely necessary. Yeah, I still think that you should have some kind of like in a horizontal progression game, you should have a very like rigid opinion on power creep. Yeah, you should not necessarily increase the power of your specs every new expansion because that will just lead in the end to making the old content still irrelevant, which is not good in my opinion. I think that's one of the beauties of a horizontal progression game is that you don't need to put out insane amount of content because the old content is always viable and interesting to do. But in Guild Wars 2, if the numbers are increasing every single expansion by like 20%, then at some point Guardian is like, you just look at it and it's dead. And that's why they, I think, address it so that they actually can use the raids, the open world bosses and all that stuff. That was a lot of damage. Just so that everybody is somewhat like still having fun with the old stuff without having to just like ignore it anymore. Yeah, I think that's the reason. I'm happy with this specific argument. Let's see what the community has to say though. Yeah. Welcome, Pini. Welcome. Is Rival Mech getting nerfed? I think pretty much everything is getting nerfed. Yeah, we will take a look at the patch notes with the actual changes to everything because there are some hidden nerfs or changes in there that I don't really agree with, but we will get to that. Yeah. It's a reverse power creep, exactly. It's just to reverse power creep. It's in that regard a rather boring patch, to be honest. Yeah, the brain will get less dopamine. That is true, but you know, in the end, if you just accept that the damage numbers are a bit lower, you can still have fun. You probably can have even more fun because old content is not as brain off anymore. You actually can like have some challenge there, or at least a little bit of like, because if you kill a boss by like not using any hands and you want to have a little bit of a challenge, then I think that can give you some dopamine as well. I think there are both sides of the coin you can make arguments for. Yeah. I'm 100% in favor of the general nerf, to be honest. Most of good content became too trivial and blameless with the current levels of power. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of, like, if you're not looking at challenge modes or something, it's like normal power level really adjusted the numbers so much that it's like almost everything is very, very easy. Thanks, Alice Soccer. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for the Prime. Hope you're enjoying the stream. Thanks a lot for the support. Isn't the power rifle mech 40k, so that's going to stay? I don't know. I don't know if they have a clear threshold and say 40k, that's what we want to have, because I think a lot of things are nerfs. For example, they nerf Embrace the Darkness, which is the elite skill on Malex. So the core condition attack on Revenant, yeah? Renegade and Conduit and Herald use that. And they nerf that straight up. And this is a nerf that affects Quickness Herald, for example, condition Quickness Herald as well, even though this is definitely one of the lower end DPS specs or lower end specs in general. So they definitely address stuff and nerf stuff that is not hitting this crazy like threshold number of 40k. So yeah, I don't know. We will have to see if Rifle Mech gets a nerf as well. Yeah. I wish LI builds didn't get hit. Hopefully good and bad players will shorten. I don't know. I think if everything goes down by 10%, everything should be somewhat similar. I think there should not be like a big gap increase or like decrease, I would say. Yeah. CMC is the balance lead, yeah. Yeah. He's the lead designer of like balancing. Trick, Roy, and CMC, they are the balance team, I guess. I don't know. But I think that's the three people. And CMC is the leader, yes. I really want them to add an ADPS for Ranger. I agree. I think ADPS for Ranger and probably also like make Vindicator somewhat viable as a Alacrity DPS. But yeah, I mean, that's wishful thinking. They don't change anything with functional changes or reworks or something in the upcoming patch. That's just how it is, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're going to have to make notes on your old videos saying plus 50 DPS. Yeah, exactly. It's definitely, I will have to make pinned comments for almost all the DPS guides and say, this is not reachable anymore. You will have to go and expect lower numbers. Yeah, definitely. But I hope I don't have to redo all of them. Oh my god, we are going in. Let's see if we get someone CCing that all instantly. Hopefully not. That's good. Yeah, Scrapper is good. Scrapper is good. If you play Rifle Mech with all the like attacks and stuff like that, and you press everything like it's supposed to be pressed, you can reach 40k. Yeah, Rifle Mech is pretty solid as a, so to say, low effort build, low intensity build, whatever you want to call it. If you of course only press the auto attack, you will reach only like lower numbers. But if you press more attacks than just the auto attack, also use in Grenade Kit, for example, 40k is possible. I think if you like Scrapper, Amalgam is pretty close to that, yeah. If you like that one, yeah, it's pretty close, pretty close. Yeah, the patch review is linked in the pinned comment on Twitch. And I can also link it in a second in YouTube chat as well. Welcome, Kami, welcome. I don't know how it works the mouse cursor with action cam, because you know with action cam, isn't your mouse cursor always exactly in the middle? Shouldn't that be the case, that your mouse cursor is always exactly in the middle, so you don't really need the mouse cursor thing then? But maybe I don't play that much with like action cam, so I might not be the right person to ask there. Since they took away condition modifiers from Weaver, I wish they gave it a new trait to play a Boon DPS healer. Yeah, I think that is pretty crazy that they like some of the changes I don't fully understand. I have to be honest. I don't fully see why they go for changes like making Weaver that like change, or Catalyst, or like the Herald nerf. I don't know. I don't really get all of that. I have to be honest. But you know, I'm just a player. You know, maybe the developers have more clue about it. I hope. I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I think this patch could like go in different directions. You know, some people might really hate it, and if they go too much on the nerfs and people are like, the whole community is like hating the game after that because they just cannot clear content anymore, then that's not a good thing. But if you do it well, then you will have a nice setup for the future, because you don't want to have the power creep going on forever and ever. I think there has to be a middle ground. I hope they find it though. I really hope. Big Elementalist player here. For open world solo play, all I ever see is Scepter is a main hand. Is a full Celestial, is there other decent option? Yeah, the other decent option would be Pistol, but Scepter is just really good with power and condition damage scaling, as well as being extremely, like, flexible. It has utility, it has blast finisher, condi cleanses and all that stuff, and Pistol is just too aggressive. So I would say that's just Scepter is overpowered, that's why everybody uses it. But if you don't like it, you can go for Pistol and you will have maybe even more DPS, but you have way less utility. Yeah. So I would say that's the other option. Everything else, dagger, sword, they are not working that well, sadly. They are not bad, but they are not even close to as good as the other two. That's just how it goes. So let's see if we can get it done. That's always the most painful like thing to do here, like the old line squad, because it's not a hard fight, but the last 10%, 20% are actually the hardest. And if the like players don't know what to do, that can be a bit painful. A bit painful, and we might have to reset. Can I ask you for making a Power Weaver Spear build for PvE? I will try, but the problem is Spear on Elementalist is right now in a spot that is not like... How can I say? It's a decent damage number, and it will get nerfed as well as the others will. But the problem with it is that it is not like insanely like, why would you pick it over a sword as a power-based weapon, like, or even like a scepter? Why would you? The problem is it's just not as good. It's stationary and it's not as good. It has more AoE maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I will try it, but right now the balance numbers are just not there. Should I CC with them? They don't know what to CC. That's not a good sign. I mean, we got it in the end. That's good, but a bit scary if they don't know what to CC. That's fine. That's fine. Celestial Hammer Catalyst? Yeah, Hammer is also decent, but Hammer is very defensive. It doesn't have that much damage, sadly, in a Celestial setting. Yeah. So, yeah, always happy to answer. Quickness Ritualist was on 33 max bench. Did they nerf the DPS too? So, the Quickness DPS Ritualist is like they nerfed it because it needs now more boon duration, which is something that is always a nerf to the damage. I think it's more than 33k. I think you can hit over 36k. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty confident about that. But yeah, I think it is a good build nonetheless. It has a lot of like utility in the kit, so I think it's okay if it does a little bit less damage than, for example, I don't know, Quickness Evoker, which has almost no utility. So let's see. We only lost one player so far. That's good, I guess. They buffed some of the spear coefficients, I think. Yeah, we'll take a look at it after this boss fight. Don't worry, don't worry. We will hope that is the last one for this group, I think. Hopefully we will be able to get the kill here. Now this is the part where it gets a bit scary. If they CC. Okay, they didn't CC. That's good. That's good. I have to heal them. Okay. This is always like crazy scary. Okay, this guy is so dead. I think I cannot get the res here. Maybe someone helps. Oh, I have to stop. Not good. We lost someone. Oh, that's painful. We lost a lot of people. Not good. Can we get some reses here? This guy is dead. This guy maybe. Aha, that's why I don't like old line squad in pack groups. It's always scary. Always scary. Okay, we got one. Oh my god, is that a cluster? Cluster F. So bad. I will catch up in chat in a second, but this needs some help here. Oh, and the push, the sucking guy is also happening. Oh no. Oh my god, and my healing is... Okay, we got the res at least. Oh my god, everything is happening all at once. Can we get the heal here? Nope. There we go. I mean, we're still like 5 people alive. That could be doable, but it's painful. It's painful. It's painful. That's Old Lines caught in a nutshell. You know, it doesn't look different in quick play. I have to be honest. It does not look different in quick play. So heal, heal, heal. I mean, I should be able to heal everybody. That's good because we only have 5 people alive. But it's not good that we only have 5 people alive. Oh, Old Lines caught. It's not even that hard. It's just like, it's just a mechanics check. Oh, okay. Concentrate, guys. Concentrate. We got this. We got this. Ooh, that's actually a bit scary here. Okay, we got here, but I think we lose like at least 1 player. Don't CC, don't CC. Okay. Yeah, only 4 players left. Only 1 DPS player, I think. Oh no. Oh no, no. It gets very scary now. We get like, because there are only 4 people. Oh my god, and I will. I have to go on the blue guy. Ooh, we have 2 healers alive. I mean, that's, I guess, something. I mean... Okay. This guy's probably dead here. Can get the heal, nice. 16%. Oh my god, is that crazy. Sorry guys that I cannot keep up with chat, but this is scary. Very scary. Don't want to vibe here, but it looks dire. Looks pretty dire. Okay, going out, but not too far out. This is not CM, this is normal mode. Okay, I mean, I guess we have this one. Now we have to CC blue, I guess. We cannot resurrect anybody, so... This is the last one. Let's CC this guy, and we should be, like, the last 10% should be okay. Like... Okay. Yeah. I think power creep, if it's very low, it's okay. You know, don't get me wrong. I think very low power creep is okay. You like to have a point to sell the expansions, but if the power creep is getting like out of hand, that's a problem. Okay, I got the green one. That's good. I can heal from range a bit. But we have so little damage. That's the problem. We have so little damage. That's not good. We have to go a bit away. I mean, it's doable. It's 3%. You have to go away. They have to kite them in the other way. I have to get the rest here, though. Okay, we have to get the rest. We have to get the rest. Oh, killed it, kill it, please. Nice, we got the kill. That's at least something. Now this guy will suck us in. Okay. Oh, the most scary, like, normal mode Old Lines quad in a long while I have done here, to be honest. It already started really bad if they didn't know which boss to CC. That's already a pretty bad sign. This guy is not very good. I mean, it's the healer. It's in a not good position. That's what I meant. Nice, they got around. That's good. Let's pull them a bit out of the... What is this? At least I'm the tank. That's good. We have to get the rest. No, commander is dead. Okay, only 3 people left alive. We have only 1 DPS. You know, they have to carry. That's it. They have to carry that. Okay, we got them. Last one. I mean, that has to be like that's the easy one. You know, we got this. Oh my god, that was way too close. I have to say. You know, you wanted some chaos. I guess that's what you got now. Some chaos. Yeah, Chronomancer as a healer is still pretty good. Just wanted to mention it here. Yeah, I mean, we got 2 healers now and 1 DPS. They just have an easy time now. Oh my god. 88% of the team's damage from 1 person. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, pretty good. We did it. That's it. That's it. Yeah, that was interesting. Very interesting. I think we have it all covered now. That's good. So let's catch up in chat. They should make it so most builds don't use Spear. The problem is they want to sell Chance der Walds expansion. So that's the thing. The problem is that they want to sell their expansions, and that leads to power creeping the new things, because only then they make it so that you have more value from something that you actually get with the expansion. If the spear would be lower or the same level, then not all the people would purchase it anymore, the expansion Chance der Walds in this specific case, because you have no real advantage of someone that doesn't have Chance der Walds, other than having a bit more content and having a different weapon, which is enough for me, but some people want to have an increase in power, and then you only get that if you purchase the expansion that actually gives you an increase in power. Chance der Walds doesn't provide elite specs, so that's the spear. Yeah. I see your argument, but I think that's not marketing what they want to do. Yeah. So let's talk about the balance. Let's talk about the balance. And I also wanted to put it in the YouTube chat. Give me a second. Let's talk about the balance patch. So in the YouTube chat. There we go. That's the patch notes I posted in YouTube chat. This is now, wait. This is now the balance patch notes for the April 14th balance patch update. And we will go over all the changes here. I will give you my opinion. I will tell you, and we can discuss what's actually happening. And this is a patch that is very interesting. We will first talk about the patch, and I will then tell you why I think this is a weird patch and it has a big negative side as well. So let's first talk about the patch, and then I will give you my opinion about the whole patch, because I think then you will also understand why I have this opinion. Yeah. So let's talk about the changes. Our objective for this update is to reduce the overall damage done by players in PvE while keeping builds at a comparable power level to one another. That's what I mentioned earlier. This is exactly what I meant. If you tune down 10% of everything, like every single build, then the overall balance, so how good is, for example, Mirage compared to Chronomancer, is not changing, because all of them are shifting at the same time. This is the important part here. The goal of these reductions is to bring player damage to a place that better matches the expectation and preserves the mechanical integrity of our older open world and instance content. So that's what I said. They want to not decrease the value of the old content. They still want to make it possible that people like it and play it like for the next 10 years. So players can expect around a 10 to 15% damage reduction in most damage-oriented builds. We do not expect these changes to have a noticeable impact on casual PvE gameplay, and players will be able to continue playing the builds they enjoy. So this is really important. They are targeting the high-end, or more, so to say, experienced player base than the overall casual open world player. They will not notice a big difference. It's more for the players that actually care about benchmarking and stuff like that. This is where this comes to play, and players that play more instance content or world bosses where they actually deal a lot of damage, just overall 10% damage reduction is noticeable in the amount of time that you spend on a boss. That's more like it. Not the single player that plays casual PvE, that will not be changing too much. Yeah, that's important. Yes, the permanent crafting contract can also access the bank. That is true. That is true. So let's talk about the general changes first. We have the Relic of the Steam Shrinker, reduce the burning stacks from 2 to 1. That is definitely like a nerf. That is a rather big nerf, because that's just like, that was a relic that not a lot of builds used, but the builds that used it had insane numbers, typically. Like you could use it on Catalyst, there it was not that crazy, but you could use it on like Amalgam and stuff like that. It was crazy numbers. They just nerfed it, and Relic of the Fog is like completely like, this is now a really bad relic, I would say, because it makes it, or not really bad, but somewhat bad, because an 8-second internal cooldown means that almost like your normal dodge is like giving you this. Not if you get any endurance any other way, if you use multiple dodges like Daredevil, it's just not working. This is a big nerf. This is a really big nerf. It was a really strong relic. It will still be okay as a relic, but the 8-second internal cooldown is a big hit. It's only in PvP and World vs. World, but only there it's really useful. Big nerf. Yeah. So let's talk about Elementalist. You know, Elementalist, that's the thing where I have the most like opinion about, I guess, maybe. So outside of PvE focused reductions, all professions are seeing Elementalist is receiving a couple of functional changes. So the functional changes, we will get to that in a second, but they are having some nerfs to overall damage output. Like you can see here, we have some like 10% to 7.5 from Inferno. That's a really important trait from like somewhat power condition hybrids things, something like that. Elementalist, that's a big like 2%, 2.5% nerf in that regard. Then you have a 3% nerf here from piercing shards. Storm Soul gets a 3% nerf. That are all damage multipliers. So that's definitely reducing the overall damage output from Elementalist power build specifically. But you also have like some buffs here. That's a good point here. We have some buffs to Spear, like just power coefficients up. The question is that enough to make Spear viable? Maybe. I think that we will have to see how much that affects it. That's definitely interesting. Definitely very interesting. You also have some functional changes here with the Raging Ricochet, but I think that's overall just Elementalist getting some much needed spear buffs and some changes to the overall damage output, but the big ones here are Stoneheart. This trait no longer prevents critical hits and instead grants large damage reduction. We don't know what that means. What is a large damage reduction? Is that like 20%? Is that 10%? What is that? But the immunity to critical hits was insane in PvP and World vs. World, so this is probably a nerf to those game modes. Maybe a buff for PvE because not a lot of bosses can crit at all. This damage reduction is reduced while specialized in Earth if you're an Evoker. Yeah, okay, I mean, makes sense, but it's definitely a nerf, I would say. Then Crashing Font, the skill no longer heals for each enemy struck, instead will always heal the user. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that changes too much, but overall Elementalist is probably one of the specs that gets the most functional changes, which is not necessarily bad. I think functional changes typically help more than just like numbers changes, but we will have to see how it turns out in the end. You also get, of course, a nerf to Elementalist condition damage bonus here. Yeah, Condi Tempest was pretty good. I guess everything nerfed. And then Weaver, like I said here, even Weaver, that is currently not most played spec, I would say, gets nerfs. Yeah, condition damage nerf, power damage nerf. Then you get no bonus to condition damage output anymore. That's crazy. That's like, I don't know why they say, okay, condition Weaver is not what we like. Yeah, I guess that's what they are going for. We have to see. And now to the big one that I think is actually really like bit sad, like, or maybe quite crazy sad, is that they nerf Catalyst damage. I think that's okay. That was supposed to happen. But at the same time, they also nerf the quickness duration. That's almost a 50% nerf of the quickness duration to the sphere. And the problem is they also at the same time reduce the boon duration that you gain from the sphere specialist trait by 50%. This is like, in the end, effectively, you have two nerfs coming to the boon DPS build or the boon heal build to Catalyst, meaning that you need a lot of boon duration and maybe make it even so that it's almost impossible to upkeep depending on what build you're playing. This is crazy. This is a crazy nerf, and I think that is not necessary. I think that is a change that I really not disagree with. I think making boon duration viable or necessary for quickness DPS build, I think that's good. But making it so that the quickness DPS build or the quickness heal build are hurt so much that it's almost not possible to play anymore, that's not good. Like, that is not good. And then you get some, of course, changes to the elemental synergy here, but yeah, not crazy. I think in general, that's the most controversial one. Yeah, for sure. Then Evoker, yeah, just some damage nerf, nothing crazy. And then we have here the buff again to specialized elements, increased empowered skill recharge reduction from 20 to 50%. So this will now buff Evoker again. So Evoker will be like pretty noticeably buffed. But again, it will also receive damage nerfs. So it becomes more of a spammy build again, which it already is, but it will become even more spammy. But the damage numbers will be tuned down as well. So we will have to see what the actual numbers here are. But Elementalist is, of course, like some kind of mixed bag here, I would say. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a fair point by Triple Cat here, is that it's interesting why they changed the damage nerfs to 10 to 15%, and then you still have the big HP sponges of like the newer bosses. That is still the case. So I think that makes it a bit like the new bosses that are tuned to a power level of that or somewhat close, makes it so that they are very long. Like they take 10 minutes and maybe even longer. You know, that's already a problem. But I think the overall power level definitely needs a tune down. So I think in general the overall changes are good, but with some bosses in mind that can be a bit annoying. I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome, Wiz. Welcome. Yeah. So Engineer. Again, we have PvE effectiveness changes, power damage coefficient, and condition damage coefficients down. There is not too much that is like exciting here, I would say, for the numbers here. Just damage nerfs over across the board. But we get a buff here from the power coefficient from Radiant Arc. I think that's the sword attack. That is interesting. And then we have some changes to cooldown reductions in PvP and World vs. World, but come on, it's 2 seconds. I think that's not like making a big difference here. We get also nerfs to Flamethrower and Grenade Kit. Yeah, I mean, it was really, really strong. It's really good in PvE. And we get like Explosives entrance, like halved. And look at this. It's only a third. It's a third of the damage in World vs. World. So that is a big hit. That is like, you have all those changes that barely affect any competitive mode player, and then you have this change that is like, bam, half the damage, or like a third of the damage only. That's quite crazy. So if you played against engineers, you know this is a very annoying attack. This is crazy. We will have to see if that makes engineer like quite a bit worse, or if it's just like, yeah, everything else is also not too happy about this patch, but that is pretty crazy, I would say. Yeah. So Holosmith, yeah, some changes, power coefficient buffs somewhat, I would say. Yeah, and yeah, Holosmith. But then at the same time, initial power coefficient down. I don't know. It's just a reshuffle, I guess, mostly. A bit of changes here. And Photon Blitz here, like the burning duration up, because Condition Holosmith was, like I said, not the best build compared to Condition Mech and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's okay. And new change now also needs a bit more boon duration to actually be easy to upkeep. Yeah, I think I always mention that. I think if you play a boon DPS build, I think you have to invest a bit of like your stats into boon duration. I think that would be good from a design perspective, and I think that's what they do here as well. I think overall Engineer, a bit less controversial for me personally than Elementalist, but like you can see, almost over 90% of the changes are nerfs. Yeah, that's the name of this patch, I would say. But we will get to Conduit and everything, don't worry. Yes, so for DPS add-on, the only one that you can use is Arc DPS. I have a guide on my YouTube channel, like very in-depth guide if you want to check it out. Arc DPS, very important if you want to see all your DPS. That's the only one that's allowed. Everything else is illegal. Like really, really important. Yeah, I agree that the nerfs are definitely needed. I agree with this, but I think some of the changes, and especially that they didn't buff other things, that's for me the more concerning thing. Let's talk about Guardian. A Guardian gets the same thing. Just on top of the damage nerf, it also gets some Luminary healing nerfs, which is also like okay because it was really good in terms of healing output as a DPS build, or as a quick or Alacrity DPS build rather. So they tune it down so that it's actually more in line with other supporters that are dealing damage. So you will see that we have some Whirling Raft changes. That's the Great Sword 2. That is pretty hefty, I would say. That is noticeable. It's a very important attack. We get some spear nerfs, we get some longbow changes and nerfs. Overall, just the most hard-hitting attacks getting nerfed. Yeah, Purging Flames is like the burning attack from the utility skill, Peacekeeper, Pistol. We get some just overall changes here. Inspiring Virtues, yeah, going down. Less damage modifier, like Furious Focus, just a new trait from January, also going down. Overall, just decreasing the damage output, as you could see with the other specs. Then you have some changes again to Dragon Hunter, like strike damage bonus is down. Yeah, makes sense. That's all the same thing, always the same. I think they mathed it out. It will probably result in a 10 to 15% damage nerf overall. We also get some changes to the burning output of Firebrand. We also get some burning output changes from Willbender. Makes sense. Also Tyrant's Momentum, a bit important trait of bonus damage also going down. And we have here, I skipped that here, we also have a functional change. Where is it? Where is it? Here in World vs. World. Or not functional, but like a nerf to Shield of Courage. That was a really good skill, or is still a good skill after the change, but that's pretty hefty increase. That's a third of the cooldown added on top. So Shield of Courage, very strong in a defensive Dragon Hunter build or in general, because it also blocks for allies. Definitely the only World vs. World and PvP change here, I think, for Guardian. So yeah, Guardian enjoyers, yeah, I think in PvE nerfed, but in competitive modes, pretty much untouched. Yeah, but we have Luminary. That's the thing. Luminary is the big, so to say, loser of the patch from Guardian's standpoint, because it was really good and is still after the patch, don't get me wrong, still really good. Just cooldown increases across the board, I guess that makes sense. Then you have damage number decreases, you have cooldown increases in competitive modes, you have damage number decreases in PvE. That's pretty much it, but you also get healing decreases and cooldown increases to the defensive attacks. So Luminary across the board, offense and defense nerfed. I think that's okay. We will have to see how it turns out, if the healing is good enough to still be played in competitive modes, but I think it's still like pretty good, especially in World vs. World. It is extremely strong in Zerging, and I think that will stay like that. Overall, I think that's all changes that you can, even as a Guardian main, I think they are reasonable. I would really see that, yeah. Yeah. Exactly, like Eldwin puts it here, I think like you see a lot of nerfs here, and even if you agree with them, you are missing one thing here. I'm pretty sure that almost everybody here in chat agrees that there is almost no buff in here. And I think in a healthy scenario, you also would have buffs here to stuff that is underused, weapons that are underused, traits that are underused. But if you nerf only the DPS numbers of something that is already played, that does not necessarily mean that you play the other things that are not used. You might just play the same things, but with a little bit less of power level. I think that's a bit concerning to me. But we will talk about that after I'm done reading all through the changes here, because there are some other things here that are also interesting. So Mesmer, for example, gets a functional change as well, but of course you also get a lot of damage multiplier decreases, like Mind the Gap, Blade Coil, so Spear, Dagger. Get some general trait changes that the number is going down, expertise is going down for chaotic persistence, stuff like that. Overall damage output is going down, power and condition damage. However, they buff the Mirror Blade. So Mirror Blade is a really weird skill in PvE specifically, because it in a solo scenario it's very high damage, but as soon as you have allies around, it becomes very weak because it focuses on allies bouncing. And now they change it a bit so that it's more front-loaded, which will still make it a weird skill, but it will be more consistent even with allies around. Not completely fixing the issue, but at least changing it to a functionality that makes greatsword a bit more in line with Spear, I would say, but we will have to see if that's like in the end really turns out like that. We also get a power block buff in competitive modes by 5%. Not sure if that's enough to make like domination like absolutely crazy on a power mesmer and power mesmer in general, but it's definitely a interesting change, because power block was a really good trade and then they changed the functionality and now it's like okay. With Chronomancer damage nerfs, yeah, and Mirage damage nerfs, nothing too crazy. It's just like exactly the numbers changes that they said, nothing to talk about that. But we also get a buff, yeah, we get a buff to Condition Virtuoso. It's probably one of the only buffs in PvE that are buffing damage numbers. Like this is Condition Virtuoso is, I think right now around 40k DPS. This is a bit of a damage increase, like 5% damage increase to Deadly Blades. It's obviously not like insane, but it's definitely a buff, and this is already a good build. Like it's a very defensive build and it's really good for hard fights. So I think this is like making it even better at this, yeah, I would say. And then we have Troubadour, only World vs. World changes. I think Troubadour in PvE is pretty like good. They already get hit by some other things here, but Troubadour World vs. World support going down. Like it's just like cooldown changes, like distortion going down, cooldown up from the important skills. Yeah, I guess that's like Troubadour is pretty, especially the crescendo nerf here, like 10 seconds on top. Oof, that's hurting. But I guess that's like necessary if you don't want to have like crazy, insane supports in World vs. World, because you saw the same with Luminary. Yeah. Exactly. So let's talk about Necromancer next. Necromancer is not that much of changes, I would say. Like we get some changes to like PvE damage numbers, like in Spite or Death Perception, for example, just the outgoing damage in power builds. We get some Weakening Shroud used when entering Shroud has been renamed Weakening Shroud and now corrupts a boon in addition to its previous effects. This is really funny because I think that was exactly the functionality before they changed this. Now it's like they go again with this. You know, before it was like it removed, like it corrupted a boon. Then they said, no, Necromancer should not have that many boon corrupts anymore and removed it. And now they give it back. Okay, I mean, that's how it is. I think that's actually quite nice. I like this. Now you have more incentive to play that. And it's for all game modes. That's a good change. That's probably one of the rare changes that also affects PvP. And then you have some Spiteful Spirit, like, yeah, just boon removal decrease. And then Reaper gets just some nerfs in PvE. And this is an interesting trait. Shivers of Dread is now increasing the chill duration as well. We will have to see how long, but that might be in competitive modes quite annoying. And in general, like, yeah, I think Reaper gets not only nerfs, but also those three changes here could be considered decently good buffs. Yeah, like no longer removes damage reduction effect. That's pretty nice. So that means that you like gives like always the damage reduction. So Reaper, that is actually buffing Reaper in all game modes, I would say, especially this tournament. But I think Reaper is probably one of the more like winners because you also have here the damage increase. Yeah, so you get the loss of like your power damage scaling here, but you get to specifically Reaper skills in PvE, you get buffs, which is exactly what I wanted. That you nerf stuff down that is overperforming, but buff stuff that is underperforming. So Reaper is the only thing here, the only thing that we have gotten so far that is actually, in my opinion, underperforming and getting buffed a bit. I don't know if that's like the 2% on Soul Eater here and like the power coefficient from 5 to 8 here on Executioner's side is like making the Reaper build like insanely broken. I'm pretty sure that it will not be the case, but it's like power coefficient of 8. I mean, tell me, there are not that many skills in the game that have that. So that will hit pretty hard. Yeah, Harbinger, some nerfs, yeah, I guess. And then it was already pretty good. And then Ritualist. Like Ritualist gets in World vs. World and PvE some nerfs. There is pretty much like healing reduction and power coefficient reduction. It was a pretty good and is still a pretty good spec. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Reaper got buffed, but I meant Reaper is like, this is affecting Reaper very much. Like Power Reaper is obviously using those two traits. So you get nerfed here, but this is buffs. I agree. I'm sorry for saying that. But yeah, next up we have Ranger. Again, not many changes. Ranger just gets some PvE changes to Spear, and Spirit of Nature gets the World vs. World changes, and I don't know, they do the swapping. They revert, like a while ago they made it like 25 seconds, now they go back up to 35 seconds if the pet is defeated. Yeah, I don't know, they cannot decide, I guess. But overall, it's like just a couple of nerfs. I think Ranger is probably the spec that gets the least affected. It's still affected, of course, especially in PvE with the Conditioned Druid getting nerfed, Power Soul Beast getting nerfed. The Conditioned Soul Beast is not getting nerfed at all. That's interesting. But Untamed getting nerfed in World vs. World. So Power Untamed, Condi Untamed in PvE. If you don't play Spear, you might still play the same build, like exact same numbers. So I think Ranger is pretty much depending on what build you're playing, might be even untouched. So Ranger is pretty safe, I would say, overall. Not too much to say about it, I would say. I guess like it's a little bit sad that the Untamed and like the Spirit of Nature changes in World vs. World that hit a bit, because that was Untamed was pretty good in World vs. World. So if you enjoyed that build, it will be worse. But I guess it's still good. Yeah. Gale Shot is untouched, yeah. I think like Troubadour, Gale Shot, those specs in PvE, they don't have that much like overperforming issues, yeah, at least for me. And you could see that they get nerfed if you played Spear, for example, on them, or if you play Mesmer and you played like Dagger or you played Spear on Troubadour as power build, then yes, you got the nerf passively from the power coefficient changes, but overall the actual spec Gale Shot is not even mentioned here, yeah. Then we have Revenant. Revenant gets some quite big nerfs, I would say, across the board, especially Condition Revenant is like insanely like nerfed. Like you have Condi Conduit, you have Condi Herald, you have Condi Renegade, all of them playing Spear, all of them playing, where is it? Embrace the Darkness, so Malex. This is pretty hefty. Like, this is a like 2-to-1 from Embrace the Darkness. That's like a 50% nerf. This is really hitting hard. Especially Herald, Quickness, DPS, Condition Herald. This is a hefty nerf. This is really hitting. And you also have some power damage changes. So for example, here the Otherworldly Bond, which is a Scepter skill, also nerfed. Then you have Coalescence of Ruin. I think that's the Hammer skill. In World vs. World, the cooldown decreased. That's good, because that was not used that much anymore. You get power efficient increases to Hammer, I think. And then in Phantom Onslaught, that's the Greatsword, gets cooldown decreases. And then you have Brutality increase the damage to 5 by 5%. That's a nice trait to have. I think they want to make Power Revenant like back in the meta in World vs. World. We'll have to see if that's enough. But in PvE, like Revenant gets insane nerfs to damage output, especially Condi Revenant. But you will see that with Conduit. Conduit also gets some power coefficient nerfs. This is pretty hefty here. Power coefficient, release potential assassin, beguiling haste, wind moon sweep. They are hitting like the right attacks. We will have to see if that's like making this build like more in line with Power Herald even, but I doubt it. I think Conduit is still better. But Condi and Power Conduit getting like big nerfs. Like, and then we get some Vindicator buffs. That is like good. Like, for example, we have here Vindicator getting buffed in competitive modes, in PvP only specifically. I don't know if that's like enough to make it like meta again, but you also get a power coefficient nerf in PvE. Like Vindicator, I always mention this on stream, I think Vindicator needed more than just numbers changes to make it actually not only more usable, but also maybe more enjoyable, because right now it's just like you drop on the enemies and you deal damage, but Conduit is just better. I think Vindicator might be getting more in line with Power Conduit, but I think it's still a bit like lackluster. It doesn't have any CC, it cannot provide Alacrity as a DPS, because then you lose all your damage. I don't know. This is definitely like too little for Vindicator, I would say. At least for PvE. Yeah. And I'm still really sad, yeah, I'm with you, the Bentos, that like Herald is not even mentioned, but it's not mentioned and getting like a lot of passive nerfs that are actually targeting more like Conduit and maybe Renegade, and Herald is caught in the crossfire. And now Herald is like, they don't mention Herald, they don't buff Herald, but they nerf Herald. Like, it's not mentioned, but it gets big nerfs anyways. It's pretty sad to be a Herald main, I would say. Like, if you play Power Herald, you're probably the only Herald that is not touched at all. But if you're playing Condi Herald, which is way better in terms of damage output than Power Herald, yeah, that is a sad day, for sure. Yeah. Let's talk about Thief, and then we get to Warrior, because like Warrior also gets some changes. But let's talk about Thief first. We have some just overall like the power levels they want to keep the same, and mostly targeting weapon skills, just power coefficients down, and also like condition durations. For example, on Spectre, you have here Spectre getting some nerfs to the torment duration, poison duration, and stuff like that. Yeah, it was just they want to decrease the damage output by all, like Condi or power specs. So it makes sense. Nothing too crazy here, I would say. Is there some functional change or something? Not really. It's just like damage numbers going down. It's not really like worth mentioning every single one of them, I would say. Daredevil also gets like a little bit of damage reduction. It was a really underrated build. It's extremely strong, like Dagger Daredevil. It's really good. And even Spear Daredevil. So definitely a nerf here. And then Deadeye's Mark, also power coefficients down. Okay, it's one of the damage builds that get nerfed as well. And then we have some antiquary changes, the artifacts here mostly that get nerfed. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because they were all like a lot of damage and you want to decrease the overall damage in this patch, so I guess that makes sense. But you get also buff to the strike damage from 2 to 3% in PvE. But you at the same time reduce the damage bonus here from 15 to 10%. So overall, with the artifacts nerf and stuff like that, I think overall all thief specs, especially like power thieves, will get nerfed. But even Condi thieves with Spectre and just the overall weapon skills, like for example, like you have here like the spear skills as well and venomous volley, like you just have some nerfs to across the board to all the weapons. Overall, thief not too interesting, I would say, but nerfed. Yeah. So let's talk about Warrior, the last one. So what is Warrior getting? Mostly PvE damage nerfs, like pretty significant nerfs to like Leg Specialist and Berserker's Power. This is pretty intense here. Berserker's Power, like this is a huge nerf. So Berserker, like power specs like Berserker or Bladestone or even Paragon Power, they will get nerfed here. This is definitely hit here. And Spellbreaker, because this is pretty good trade. And then in Berserker we get some buffs to Hammer, and we get like a change from the power coefficient from Fatal Frenzy here, but come on, like this doesn't really change too much. You get like Bloody Roar, the damage increase reduction, you have the Bloody Reaction, reduce the power to condition damage conversion from 15 to 12%. So like you notice that just overall Warrior gets a few amount of changes, but they affect the damage output. You have some damage like reduction to Spellbreaker, to Berserker. Almost everything gets nerfed, but you also get a Paragon nerf, which is obviously Condi Paragon with like the condition damage increase here from Strengthening Stanzas is down. Crisp Pacing reduce the damage condition damage reduction. So Power Paragon is like less affected, but you have the Berserker's Power nerf for that one. And then you have Condi Paragon, which is affected by the Paragon traits themselves. So yeah, Warrior, one of the most boring classes in this patch, but also pretty hefty nerfs. So over the board, I think they muffed it out. I would say, to summarize, every class gets like pretty much every DPS build gets a 10 to 15% damage nerf, with a couple of exceptions, like for example Virtuoso, Condi Virtuoso specifically. Power Virtuoso is nerfed. I think Power Reaper is an exception. I think Untamed is an exception. Maybe Condi Soul Beast. Yeah, Condi Soul Beast is also an exception. And pretty much everything else is getting nerfed. Maybe Spear on Elementalist could be somewhat like okay now. But the problem is, it was already somewhat okay, but now it might be even better. But you get so many damage modifier nerfs that Spear will definitely also have lower damage than before. And now let's talk about the things that I actually think is, for me, a bit concerning about this patch. Is that you have like, you can probably count, it's probably like around maybe like 100 to 200 changes that you do here. But the amount of functional changes you do in this patch is, let's be honest, yeah, the amount of functional changes you have in this patch is probably, you can count on like 2 hands. So if I would summarize this patch, for me personally, I would say this is a very small patch. Because yes, it changes a lot, it nerfs a lot, but what I actually can do after the patch, what I couldn't do before, is barely nothing. Like, it doesn't change the meta in like a significant way outside of maybe World versus World Zerging. I highly doubt it will change the meta in PvE, because if everything gets tuned down by 10%, it stays where it is, just 10% lower. If you make almost no PvP changes, you have no PvP changes, obviously. And World vs. World is maybe the only game mode where you might have a little bit of a meta change. But this is a patch that is like 3 months until we get the next one. Maybe, we don't know, we have no confirmation. But I think this is rather a small patch. I was hoping in this patch, don't get me wrong, before I get to what I was hoping, don't get me wrong, I think this is a patch that was necessary. I think it's very necessary to decrease the damage in PvE. Because the damage has been like skyrocketing since like the last 1, 2, 3 expansions. I really think that's necessary. But I was hoping that we also get buffs to underused specs, like Herald, like maybe make Weaver more interesting, maybe make, so to say, specs that are not really shining in anything, like for example Vindicator, a bit more usable in PvE. Maybe make some reworks to specs that are just not as commonly used. Best example is again Herald. But they have not touched those specs. Mostly they get nerfed anyways. This is a bit concerning. I really hoped for some big reworks, big changes to stuff that is underused. Maybe even buff relics, maybe buff, I don't know, skills that are not used, utility skills, buff weapon skills that are not used, weapons in general, so that you can have more, so to say, flexibility. And now this is effectively in PvE not changing the meta at all. Effectively, this is a patch that just shifts the meta down, but it doesn't shift the meta in terms of like new specs, new builds, new something. It doesn't enable anything new. If you wanted to play Herald, then now is a better time than before, than after. And that's just sad because Herald right now is already in a bad spot. I don't know. I think this patch is like necessary. I'm happy that they make those nerfs, but I'm not happy that it's not going all the way and buffing stuff that is underused. That is my summary for this patch. Yeah, really, really sad. I don't know. I think you could argue that some specs like Thief here, Hype says that they don't deserve the nerfs. I think it's like, it depends what kind of specs you play. You will always have different opinions there. I play all the specs and I think like most of the nerfs here are justified because you want to just tune down the damage numbers across the board. If they had to do it like that, that's another question. But overall, I think it's okay what they did here with the nerfs. It's not everybody will like it, I agree. But I think they should have more focused also on buffing underused stuff and not only nerfing. But yeah, I guess that's what we get this time. Yeah, let me know your takes here, what you think, if you agree with my summary here. But this is definitely a controversial patch. That's probably almost everybody would agree here. Like some people would even say the damage nerf is not necessary. I think that is a hot take, but I guess that is an opinion to have as well. And then this patch will not be like good for you. You will not like it if you want to have like insane power levels. This will not make you happy. And I can see that some people will be upset about the nerfs to like all specs, like every specs getting nerfed. Like I said, I want to mention one thing here at the end. I think the Catalyst change is probably the one that I'm the most upset about. Not necessarily because I play Catalyst that much. I actually don't. I play almost all the specs, but Catalyst is one of the rarer specs I play. But making it so that you get a 50% almost decrease on Spectacular Sphere and you get a 50% boon duration decrease from Sphere Specialist makes it so that Quickness DPS Catalyst and Quickness Heal Catalyst are actually getting borderline unplayable in the boon output. You know, you have to like, it's like very, very close after this to get the perfect like quickness uptime. And you need insane amount of boon duration for that. This is pretty hefty. I think that is not what you want to do. I think that was not necessary. I think the damage nerf would have been good enough, but this is, yeah, will hurt. I think I cannot see that one, but almost all the others I'm pretty much like on board with. Let's jump back in the game. But yeah, let me know your takes if you have any like interesting points that I have not pointed out yet. I'm always happy to talk about it. Always happy to talk about it as well. Yeah, they said they didn't want to change the functions. I know. I'm just saying it's sad that they say that. You know, why do they say that? This is a rather big patch in terms of number changes, but in terms of what it actually does for the meta, it is not a really big change. So for me personally, I think that's a bit, like, I'm a bit sad about this. Yeah. With this patch for veterans will still clear rates, but slower. And barrier to entry for new player is increased. Our builds remain the same. They will just reverse. Yeah, exactly. I think that is a very good question to ask. Is this a patch that is targeting veterans so that they have more enjoyment out of the game because the power level is more to what, so to say, we had originally in the game? I guess that's what it is, because they said in the beginning the casuals will not be affected that much. But at the same time, if you are a casual player and you want to get into raids, the power level that you have right now makes it easier for you to get into raids. So, I don't know. I think I agree with you. I think this is a really weird patch. What is the target audience, you know? What is like the reason here to nerf all this stuff, but like the people that really care about it will not be affected because they don't change what they play. And the people that are not affected because they're casuals, they don't care about this patch anyway, so it's like it's almost like a null patch. I don't know. I get that argument. I get it. I would really like to hear some kind of manifesto from the developers regarding this patch. Is that now the new baseline power level that they want to do? And that's just setting up for the future? Because then I can understand this patch. But if it's just like they wanted to decrease the power levels that they had before and they did not have enough time or resources to put out any like meaningful changes that are like really affecting how you play builds or underused builds are used, this is a bit sad then. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with the 40k boon DPS. That's a lot of damage. I agree. That is definitely a good change that they nerfed it. Yeah, I think they want to really make it so that it's the setup. You know, for the future, they want to have this the new baseline, and they cannot have this the new baseline if all the specs are crazy above the threshold. So I think that's probably the reason. Yeah, yeah. Especially as Water Walker in World vs. World now that their skills recharge faster. I mean, it was crazy good before, but now they might buff it again. But there is a build alpha around, so you can still play this one. It's really good. But it's like not really good, but it's really fun. If you like some kind of like healing output, cleanses and stuff like that, it's probably getting a lot better with the patch for sure. Yeah. 15% is too much. I don't know. I might agree with you that might be too much, but you have to understand that 15%, you will only notice this 15% change if you are like reaching a benchmark. If you are a player that is like getting to like say 70% of the benchmark and you just play rather casually, then you will not notice 15% of your 70% going down. I think that's more like a 5% then, because a lot of times reaching the benchmark number is affected way more than if you would just decrease the performance of your build yourself. You know, it's hard. What I wanted to say is like just the rotation performance of a single player matters way more than the 10 to 15% nerf that they will do now. So for casual players, this will not affect it, hopefully, that much. Yeah. I will do new tier lists after the patch, I would say. Especially for DPS, yeah. For sure. Yeah, 50k DPS for normal DPS is too much, 40k for boon DPS is too much. I agree with this, for sure. But it doesn't mean that this is a good patch just because they made this thing right. I think overall you can still make the argument this is a patch that is rather like boring because it doesn't really change that much. Yeah. I'm most sad about Condi Firebrand nerfs. I think harder to play builds like Mirage, Condi DPS should be rewarded in terms of damage. I agree with this statement, but I know a lot of people in the community actually don't want harder to play builds having more damage. And I think Firebrand is still really good because it has crazy utility. Yeah, so I think it's like if you enjoy Firebrand and Mirage, you will still be able to play them. I think Mirage is actually not getting like completely butt-shot. You can still play that as one of your best builds. You have to be really careful here. Gale Shot is a good target. If the pet hits you for like all the damage. Let's focus on this guy using the invuln. Okay, we like that. Okay, come on. They are pretty hefty on this guy. Maybe we can get this guy. We'll talk more about balance after I concentrated and hopefully got this fight here. Pretty scary here, pretty scary. I will just leave here. Okay, we got a kill. Nice. That's pretty solid, like pretty solid here surviving. That was good. Get the decap here. But we also have the side notes. It's a really good match so far, like from our team, I have to be honest. Get the damage down, get this guy. Nice. Looks good. Decent. I like it. They got the self-rest there, maybe with the thief. To be a bit careful, we go to a no port spot here. I wonder if they base their nerfs based on rotation on SC benchmarks. I think they like pretty much 100% that this is the case, yeah. Daredevil is so strong right now. They will get the buff. I guess I will help close. Yeah, so the benchmarks are very important for them to balance. I think that's not the only thing that they take into account, but it's definitely one of the more important things for sure. So let's get the kill here. Nice. That was important outnumber, I have to be honest. I think our ally would have died there. That's good. That's good. And it moves slowly. I hope this is a step to normalize content. I hope so too. I think that like, you always have to understand, like, balance patches are not, don't look at balance patches in a vacuum. Look at balance patches as something that is like happening over a course of time. So one balance patch after the other. This guy will engage on me, I guess. Okay, not a lot of damage though. Okay, this is a good target. Okay. Oh my god, the gay shot. Okay. Using all the attacks in my invulnerable. That's good. You like that? Okay, okay, okay. No, the elite as well. Okay, this is probably an easy target now. Oh, the invulnerability. Okay, I think we got him. Nice. Very good. Good, good, good. Welcome, Never. Welcome, welcome. I personally think that this patch is the start of what we were asking for some time now, that our damage keeps spiking with each expansion. Yeah, I think it's, in that regard, it's a good patch. I just am a bit sad that they don't change underperforming specs. You know, for me, a balanced patch is always something that you balance in both directions and not just make one direction or the other. Daredevil is so good right now. I think I'm so dead here. At least I got him to 50%, but it's not helping. Yeah. I mean, we got the map from that. That's okay. That's okay. I think it's silly because, yes, SC is amazing, but those rotation are god mode hard, some of them. The problem is you have to have some threshold or something that you balance around, you know? What would be the other, what would be the alternative? What would be the other thing that you say, okay, I balance around those numbers, you know? What is, like, you can, the balance, I agree that most players, over 90% of the players will never reach those benchmark. And I'm included. I don't get most builds to the benchmark. Yeah, so that is completely fair. But you need something to balance around. And I think that's the only real thing that we have right now are those benchmarks. Daredevil is so good. Like, maybe it's just me, but for me, like, this is really good, Daredevil. I mean, the gay shot and the Daredevil on me. So. Not good. Nice, we got the rally. Very good. Oh, the banner even. The banner. Insane. Legendary support. Very good. Gotcha. Oh, the invuln again. It's crazy. Okay, good. Was a pretty solid match, I would say. Only died once. I will catch up in chat in a second. Just want to concentrate here. Don't want to die again. And then we want to talk more about balance. Just playing my daily PvP match. Just for the funsies here. The gay shot is again on me. Oh my god, this guy is also on me. Nice, we got the kill. Very good, top damage, like that. So, let's talk about more about balance here. Yeah, I like the new bosses, that will be a big problem. Like the new bosses like Keller and the CM's challenge modes, yeah, you will definitely notice a problem with this, yeah, for sure. That this will affect the performance of the harder fights, for sure. For sure. But what can you do? What can you do about this? Not that much, you know? You always have to make the assumption that if you do nerfs to the overperforming specs, then you will probably also hit the stuff that is like important for the challenge modes and for the hard content. What makes DD so good in PvP right now? So Daredevil is good because everything else got nerfed and you have a lot of rather bursty specs like Evoker, like Luminary, and you have a lot of dodges and stuff like that. So that's you have a pretty good setup for the specific, like killing those builds, and you're very fast and very, like, that is the main thing here. But I'm with you there, I agree that it's not like because of its own buffs. Yeah, it does not have its own buffs. For sure. What spec right now do you recommend for casuals to learn PvP? I think Evoker is pretty good. Like you play like a side note Evoker, not the build that I just played. You play in like, for example, Condition Evoker. That's pretty easy to get into, I would say. Yeah. Thumbnail is concerning. Yeah, it is. It is. It's like that was the expression that I had when I saw the balance yesterday first. Maybe we got a kill here. Yep, it did. I thought there might be something going on, but there's nothing going on in World versus World. Very sad. Yeah, PvP rush. Not a lot of people agreed with you there, Bentius. I had fun with the PvP rush as well, but some people were not really happy with like how it changed the PvP queuing and stuff. Power Devil, for example, staff has 10k benchmark less than top DPS builds and it's getting nerfed. The problem is that I think they want to tune down everything, and in the crossfire builds get nerfed as well. So for example is like the staff Daredevil build that you mentioned, but I also think one good example is Herald. Herald is not mentioned in the patch notes, but it's still getting nerfed like crazy, especially Condi Herald, because of the changes to Embrace the Darkness, to changes to Spear. It is like getting like hit like insanely hard. And this is a side effect of having to nerf stuff but not buffing stuff. They buffed like Reaper, they buffed Virtuoso, and that's like pretty much it. They don't buff that many things. But if you would buff some stuff like that is underperforming, or that is not like as good as the other things, like, let's not say underperforming, but not as good as the others, then that would actually make it so that you could play and say Staff Daredevil gets now to a level that Spear Daredevil is, or Dagger Daredevil is. But if you nerf everything by 10% and then you make almost no buffs, then yeah, sure, it will also hit the stuff that is like not supposed to be hit. Because if you make a trait nerf that is like, for example, in like, I don't know, in Luminary you get this trait here gets now, instead of 10%, a 5% damage nerf that hits all weapons, regardless of what kind of weapon you use. So yeah, sure. That is a problem. And that's why I think you always have to do balance patches around two things. Buffing underperforming specs, but also nerfing a lot of the overperforming specs, so that you meet in the middle and you have a new meta that is somewhat more balanced or somewhat more unique. Right now it seems like they only want to do one direction, which is a good setup for the future, but which leaves this patch in a rather like sad situation where you have some specs that get hit way harder than they actually should be. At least that's what I think, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm just a player. What can I do? I'm not the developer here. Personally, why those count of balance chases over everyone are a good path, I'm more worried about the hardest recent fights being doable. Yeah, I agree. That is definitely a big concerning point, for sure. Yeah. No, I made not a video about it yet. I will probably release one tomorrow about it. I have another spicy video planned for today, and I'm currently streaming, obviously, so I cannot edit the video yet anyway. But tomorrow I will talk about the balance changes, for sure. It's stupid to nerf Alacrity for Amalgam since it already provided a very low 6 seconds duration for a total of 8 seconds, while all move skills have a 20-second cooldown. It makes no sense if they nerf it 4 seconds and a total 12 seconds, then you need to completely change your gear just to provide wounds. I think that's the intention. I agree with you that might seem stupid, but the intention is exactly that you need to bring some wound duration. I think what you can see in this patch is that they want you as a wound DPS support, like Alacrity DPS or Quickness DPS, that you need to provide permanent quickness or alacrity, that you need to bring wound duration. Like not 100%, but you have to invest a little bit in wound duration. And you saw that with Ritualist, you see that now with Catalyst and Amalgam. I think that's the main goal. I'm not saying necessarily that this is a good thing, but this is something that they are pushing towards too, and that's a reasonable way to do it. I mean, the Eternity footsteps are only so good, so big because I'm an Asura. If you play a Char, the footsteps are still the same size, and then you have to, it's more reasonable, I would say. Yeah. I love Longbow Ranger. What do you think is the best build for roaming? That's easy, somewhat low intensity. I think the Gale Shot is the best with Longbow. You have the best usage there, because you could also play probably Untamed. Those two are the best users for Longbow. Yeah, you can use some Sigam Gale Shot, Sigam Soul Beast, that's the name. But I think the best user is Gale Shot and Untamed. Those are really good users of making Longbow shine. It's not the best weapon necessarily for Ranger in competitive modes, especially for roaming, but I think it's a decent weapon choice. So I would say if you enjoy Ranger, that's probably a solid pick, going for Untamed or going for Gale Shot. Having Boon DPS bring Ritualist or Diviner is what wanted to get a difference between full DPS and Boon DPS benchmark. Exactly. I think that's a good change. I think one of the really big things that I think is a bit missing in Guild Wars 2 is gear usage in PvE. The gear usage in PvE is so, I don't know, it's so Berserker or Viper gear, maybe even Dragon gear, but you are never forced to bring supportive gear. If your supports are running Minstrel or something like that, then your Boon DPS typically can run full DPS gear. And I think that's not how it's supposed to be. They want to have this. That's an interesting engage, I have to say. They want you to have more gear changes or more different gear depending on the role that you fill. I think that's a reasonable idea. I think it's annoying for people that already set up the gear and get the Ascended gear for this build and want to play it. Sure, that can be annoying. But yeah, I mean, it's the 101 Willbender build. I think I'm not sure if I can win against this one. We will try. Yeah, it's what I feared. The 101 Willbender build, I cannot win against that because I have no sustain. They have, I don't have. Sad. This patch just feels like they don't know what to do and therefore just blanket nerf. We all know they will take years to rebalance these changes. I don't know. I think they want to bring it more in line. I think that's the real goal, what they want to do. They want to bring everything down so that the future is more easy to put out new stuff, because now it seems like all the new stuff is insanely overpowered. Old stuff is left behind. If you bring everything down to a decent power level, you can make the future a bit easier to bring out new stuff. That's probably what they are going to do, so that the next balance patch has a bit more, a bit more freedom. That's my guess. Yeah. If the dual has boons, they might as well implement baseline quickness and alacrity. Yeah, I mean, that was my point with the permanent boon video that I made a while ago. I'm definitely with you there. I think if you make boons too easy to come by and everybody has permanent boons all the time, then why have them in the first place as temporary, supposedly temporary buffs? Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. It kind of seems predatory that they buff so much to sell during expansion, then they nerf it after. This is a fair criticism. I definitely see that. I think in an ideal world, you would not have power creep with the expansions at all, so that you don't have to nerf it down back in the later stages of it. But I have to be honest, I can understand the marketing aspect of that as well. You know, you want to sell your expansions, and if it's 5 to 10% better and you nerf it down after a while, then it seems predatory to some extent, but you still had the fun during the time. If you purchased it right at the beginning, you still had the fun, and you can still play the specs. It's not like they're taking away Evoker if you played it because it was strong. I can get your point, but I think it's not like that they completely destroy a build. It's just like they don't make it as broken anymore. So it's the incentive is still there to buy the expansion because you get access to the new elite spec, but you at the same time don't have it so overperforming that you are forced to purchase it. I think it's more questionable that they make it so that it's better. Like the nerf is, in my opinion, okay. The problem is more like that they make it so strong that it's almost like, okay, is that even reasonable at this point anymore to make like especially look at PvP. When PvP was like when that was like the Visions of Eternity specs came out, and PvP was like, if you played anything else than Vision of Eternity specs, you were trolling. And this is that was more concerning to me. But that is now like something that is like it is right now. I think that's okay. That's okay for me. The slight elementalist spear buff caught me off guard. At this point, I didn't expect them wanting it to have a better chance on 1.2k range elite spec like Evoker Weaver. I'm still looking forward to ST release a build on it. Yeah, I hope that especially Weaver would be awesome. I think like Weaver's spear sounds like a really fun build. Problem is, I don't know if the numbers changes that they buff the spear are counteracting the damage numbers changes to all the traits. I highly doubt that. So I think it's like still not an ideal like weapon and spec to use as a DPS, I would say. To me, it's just rinse and repeat. Nerf now, they bring new content every... yeah, I think I'm with you there, Rising Reap. I think it's just like, that's how they do it. Again and again, they just repeat this pattern. And this, if you're used to it, you don't need to like complain anymore. It's just like, we are used to it, I guess, at this point. Yeah. Not on the topic of nerfs, but there's a superb storage package in the game shop. Will it be always available? So I'm pretty sure that it will not always be available. What is that like? What? That's interesting. Like, what? I just one-shot this guy almost. They have no gear or something. I think it's like it's pretty much confirmed that this package will go away. I would be highly like I'm pretty sure it's not staying, this package. So if you want to get it and you really get value from it, you should probably get it right now. Sadly. So, does it die? Yeah, it does. Very good. What do you think about the changes in Mesmer Greatsword? So, the Mesmer Greatsword changes are like that is a hot topic. So, the Mesmer Greatsword, maybe I should actually swap to a Mesmer to show this. But Mesmer Greatsword 2 is a really weird skill, and it has insanely high damage if you play it in a solo situation. But as soon as you have allies around, it does not that much damage anymore because it prioritizes bouncing to allies instead of enemies. Therefore, you get less damage if the allies are also standing there. Now they buff this in a way that I don't really understand, or I understand, but I think it's not the best way. It's just buffing the first hit, meaning that you don't care if it bounces between allies or enemies, if the damage is coming from the first hit mostly. That is a weird change, and I don't know, it's just like a band-aid fix to me. But I think it's making Greatsword better, and I think I liked it. I think they could have done it in a better way, but I take everything I get. I have to be honest. I take everything I get because like having changes is better than not having any functional changes if they are in the right direction. That's my opinion. That is my opinion. Okay, let's go and maybe contest here the border, the keep. Let's see if we can get there. Nice. Thanks for confirming, Noctu. Yes, it's going away on Tuesday. Very good, very good. Yeah, I mean, there will be a lot of things very interesting. Starlit, like you will have the changes that are coming to, like, or all the things that are, so to say, coming with the latest 2 expansions, let's say, like Keller, like Starlit. All the really big HP spongy fights will be more HP spongy than before. Like, it will take longer to kill them. That's just, yeah, that's definitely a thing there. Yeah. Yeah, Silent Surf, yeah, all the really long fights that just are feeling very painfully long, they will feel even longer after this. It will take a while to get accustomed to it again, because at some point you forget what was, so to say, the fastest before, but it's definitely noticeable, yeah. Does Mesmer Greatsword penetrate through bubble shields? Yes, it does. It penetrates everything. The Greatsword 2 skill penetrates, like, it's unblockable, meaning that you cannot reflect it or deflect it. So it's like a really good skill in that regard, but it's a really weird skill because it's like, I don't know, it doesn't explain its functionality at all on the tooltip. And I think that's always weird. You know, a new player would read that and think, oh, that's a nice skill. And then you use it in a solo situation and it does a lot of damage. And then you think, oh, nice, I will use that in my raid build if I get more experience. And then you get in your raid and you suddenly, like, you don't even notice, but your DPS will just be way lower because this skill is just so, it's just so functionally different. It's really weird. Really weird, for sure. I'm a bit new to the game, but your videos have been very helpful so far. So I wanted to say thank you. Nice. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. Hopefully enjoying the game. Always happy that I can help you out. Ah, it's the green guys that are in here. Okay. Thought it's the hours, but it's not set. Then if I'm new, if new coming specs are not overperforming old specs, what would then be their selling point if not just a new class to play? I think Guild Wars 2 being classified as an MMO, players are gonna think that they would want a new class that can hit harder than the older classes. Thanks a lot, Forkan Funzel. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for the Prime. Hope you're enjoying the stream. Yeah, I think that is a very common concern. You know, we had Spears with Chantervites. We had Soto with the Weapon Master proficiency and the expanded weapon proficiency. We had Visions of Eternity with the new lead specs. The selling points of those expansions was always that we get new stuff that was pretty good when it released. There was almost no time where a specific weapon or a new elite spec or something that came out was underperforming because they want to sell the new expansion. It's not, in my opinion, as bad that you cannot play the others anymore, but it's definitely a bit noticeable. However, and that's the big problem, is that in an ideal world, I would say it should be because it's new, not because it's better. In an ideal world, the new elite specs, the new weapons should be considered as new extensions to what I already like to play, and I purchased the expansion because I want to play something new. I know that ArenaNet is not really seeing it like that all the time because they also make them overpowered, but I think in an ideal world it would be like that. I would at least purchase the expansion even if it would not be overpowered. Yeah. Welcome, Andrew. Welcome, welcome. What's the most beginner-friendly PvP build on Necromancer? That's not Condi Reaper. I think it's probably Power Ritualist. Power Ritualist is probably the easiest to get into. It's quite forgiving. It has a teleport. It has like defenses and damage and CC. I think that's pretty much the best build you can get right now. Yeah. In your opinion, which class has the most viability with staff as a primary weapon? That would probably be like support Guardian or support Necromancer. Those two have really good like staff usages. Or support Warrior. Like staff is always a support weapon in those three builds, but they are really, really good in those three builds. So I would say those would be my top pick. Yeah. I don't know, there's nothing happening here. Thanks a lot, Burrows. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for the Prime. I really hope we get some fights, but there's nothing going on. Like nothing. Literally nothing. So sad. But yeah, I would say for staff, if you like support, Warrior, Guardian and Necromancer are really good for staff. If you like it as a DPS weapon, probably like Thief. It's probably the best DPS weapon that you can get. Maybe Condition Mesmer, maybe there. Yeah, Condition Mesmer is also like primary DPS weapon. But that's about it, I would say. That's about it. Sadly, Staff is like... Staff, almost every class can use it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a typical primary weapon in like DPS builds. It's really supportive. It's somewhat like Shield. Hope that answers your weapons. The boring fights just taking longer is one of the biggest sad aspects about the patch. Things like Dagda, Kanexai, and the Starlit Welt meta boss. Yeah, I agree. I think like I always am in favor of fights that are not necessarily short, but they are more interesting. A lot of those fights are not really like challenging. They just like they take forever to die. You know, that's for me always like I don't like that. But I think we cannot change that. I think that's maybe they are just the like numbers, the health bars of the bosses, but I doubt it. I highly doubt it at this point. Yeah, Wing 8 will definitely be Wing 8 will be painful, and there will be a convergence coming up. Good point here by Evros. There will be a convergence coming up in August or something. At the last patch, there will be a convergence. Or is it? I think it's in the last patch, yeah. And that will be very interesting to see how they actually like are the numbers like insanely like crazy there, or is it like or is it like fixed a bit that it's not too bad? Because right now I'm a bit concerned of those numbers. They might be like really HP spongy, and we don't have the numbers to make it rather fast, the DPS numbers. I don't know. We will have to see. But yeah, Wing 8, Keller, and Starlit Welt, they have pretty high health pools for sure. Staff Mirage is pretty good, yeah. Yeah, good point. But I think Mirage is receiving a nerf, and I think Staff Mirage is already not in a spot where a lot of people like it. So I think if you like it, go for it. It's a good choice for playing with a staff, but it's definitely not a weapon that I would say is like giga busted and you have to play staff. You know, Axe Mirage is also really good. Like you play Axe staff typically, but still, you know. Staff with Elementalist on Tempest. The problem is Staff on Elementalist. We bring that up here quite a lot because I'm an Elementalist enjoyer. Staff is a really weird weapon in Elementalist. Because Elementalist has 4 attunements, Staff can be played as a DPS weapon in competitive modes, especially in World vs. World as a like Zerg DPS build. However, on the other side of the coin is that Staff has a lot of healing and utility. And that's the main reason why a lot of people play it in PvE and like PvP even, is because of its support capabilities. So how in the actual like world would you balance stuff like that? Like how would you balance that? Like how can you balance a weapon that has 1200 range as a support weapon, but at the same time is also providing some damage if you use it correctly? So I think right now Staff on Elementalist is mainly used as a support weapon. So DPS like in PvE specifically is like trolling. I think it's not good. And we don't really have a long-range caster weapon on Elementalist, so I really hope they make it so the ideal world would be that Staff can be both. I really hope for me personally that Staff is baseline. Let's say Staff is baseline, a support weapon. Yeah. So baseline, you have nice healing on Staff on Elementalist, you have nice CC on there. And then you can take a trait, let's say in fire or in air, a trait that specifically alters the damage you do on your Staff. And you say, okay, you decrease the cooldowns of all your supportive skills by like 300%, but you get 300% more damage on your support weapons, on this support weapon. Yeah, that would be, in my opinion, that would be a really cool like play and really cool, interesting theory crafting. However, the problem here is that I have no clue if they will ever do stuff like that. I don't know, would really like that. I don't know. It seems like not a good build here. I've tried Celestial Firebrand, but it's not really working that well. Debating to get Shantae Wilds during sales, is that worth it? Currently have all the other DLCs besides Shantae and Visions of Eternity. So I would say it depends what you like out of the game. I think the story in Shantae Wilds is pretty slow, like really, really slow. So if you like to have story, it's not the best there in my opinion. But if you like new maps, a spear, and good, like decently good metas and stuff like that, I think it's actually like it's a good expansion to get. Especially the spears is probably the best selling point. But you get the Warclaw upgrade. I think it's actually, you get homesteading. I think Shantae Wilds is underrated. I would say if it's the only expansion missing and you like the game, I think it's worth a purchase if you have the money, but it's definitely not a must buy. But either way, if you want to support the channel, you can use my referral link in the description. And I would say personally, buy it if you really like the game and if you want to get everything from it, because spears are just good weapons. But I think it's one of the expansions that you can easily skip. It's not, in my opinion, like, for example, Soto is a harder skip because of the, like, all the features it provides. Or for example, I would say if you want an elite spec, you definitely want to have one of the elite spec expansions. That's why Shantae Wilds is not as important, it doesn't have elite specs. I think it's one of the easier skips. But if you like the game, I think it's definitely worthwhile getting, like 100%. Maybe we can get a defense here. Can we get the res here? Maybe. I think we can get the res here, I'm pretty sure. Easy res. From like 1% or something. I remember running Staff Weaver in open world in PvE. I actually felt like a mage, but it was a painful experience. Yeah, I think the problem is Staff was once upon a time a DPS weapon in PvE. The problem is Staff is not anymore. It's just like power crept like crazy. And in my opinion, it would be way better if they would like make Staff a weapon that is actually either flexible or they give it a real identity. Because right now it's like it's sitting somewhere in between. And that's not good. That's not where you want to be, at least in PvE. Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, if Visions of Eternity is not on sale, then you should not purchase it. It's probably not going on sale as long as it's like the main thing, you know. Visions of Eternity is currently the last expansion, the latest expansion, so I think it will not go on sale until it's not anymore, or it's at least a year old. So you have to wait for that one. But Shantae Wilds, if it's on sale, probably a decent purchase for sure. Some classes will gain more value from Shantae because of the builds are using Spear or just Spear in general. Yes, that is a good point. There's some classes, for example, like if you play Guardian, if you play Mesmer, if you play like some specs, like maybe even Necromancer, they play a lot of Spear. Like a lot of builds in competitive modes in PvE using Spear. So you get a lot of value, especially if you use even Underwater Spear as well. So you get a lot of value there. But, or a Revenant, for example. But some specs, like for example Warrior, like what's another good example? Elementalist, they use the spear on some builds, but not like on all the builds, and therefore it's like a weapon that I would say is like for those specific specs, if you only play those, it's not the most important one. Yeah. So it always depends what kind of player you are, what kind of specs you like. Yeah, that's just how it goes. Yeah. Well, since I'm coming from World of Warcraft and did a lot of Mythic Plus dungeons, I feel like Fractals needs a tier 5 and tier 6 added on top of them, being CM compatible. That would be awesome. Like, one of the best features they could add for me, or for players in general that are somewhat try-hard and somewhat hardcore PvEers, would be more daily content. Like, we have currently the daily raids, and the daily raids are a good system, yeah? So where is it? Daily raids. It's a good system. Yeah, this is a good system. The problem that is like for players that like to have dungeon style thing, they don't really have that. Daily dungeons exist, that's Fractals, but it would be even better if you have more challenge there because they are pretty solidly easy right now. So I'm with you, tier 5 and tier 6 and more challenge mode would be awesome, but right now it seems like it's out of scope. You know, they bring out one Fractal every year. That's like barely anything, but I'm happy that we get it. We have to see how good it is, but definitely would love that for sure. Yeah. Yeah, you can still run Staff DPS in World vs. World in a Zerg. That's the only place where Staff Elementalist is still like decent, yeah. Staff for support Elementalist also competes with Dagger Warhorn, which I do prefer over Staff. Yeah, Staff has the range advantage, but pretty much everything else goes to Dagger Warhorn. Yeah, for sure, for sure. That's the problem of like having so many weapon axes right now, is that you will never use a weapon that just has a range advantage if you stack on top of each other all the time. That's not good enough. You need utility, you need boon extension, you need healing and stuff like that. That's just oftentimes better on Dagger Warhorn. Yes. Yes, the nerfs are necessary. I agree with you. But there could have been more buffs. That's the main negative. Yeah, I'm with you there, Hardus. I think they will make the Visions of Eternity sale starting when they are done with Visions of Eternity. So like probably August, September. I'm pretty sure there will be the first sales of Visions of Eternity. Yeah, Spear and Staff Elementalist buffs would be awesome. We get some Spear buffs though. That's good with the upcoming patch. That's good. Yeah, Ranger Staff is weird. Like, Ranger Staff is really weird in competitive modes, especially in PvP. You don't have Support Ranger or Druid, like, being viable since, like, I don't know, at this point 8 years ago or something. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. So, Benteos, I'm with you. I think new dungeons would be even better than more fractals, or, like, tier 5 and tier 6 fractals, but I think, like, dungeons are, like... I think they will never touch dungeons again. I think dungeons are just so much legacy code and so much legacy like development. I think they will never touch it, sadly. I'm just too realistic there. Yeah. This game lacks 5-man content, to be honest, and there's nothing to really get value from doing the UFE. It's only an amount and there's no value behind it. That's true. Yeah, I mean, the problem is Guild Wars 2, if you come from World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, Guild Wars 2 is not a game that shines or excels at having hardcore, long-term PvE content. That's just not what Guild Wars 2 really does. Guild Wars 2 now with the raids, it's a bit better, but for fractals, it's like, it's your gold farm. It's not necessarily something that actually like gives you prestige or is actually really hard. It's more something that you do because it's fun and gives you gold. And Guild Wars 2 is more of a casual game. It's really not really at least trying to be like the instance infinite scaling type of content. And I think that's a bit sad, but I think we have to accept it. I think that will never change. Maybe in the future with Arena it has some other things planned, but for now Guild Wars 2 I don't see that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sadly dungeons are it's gone. It's gone. So if you're coping for dungeons, I think I have to really like say this is sadly not like coming back. I think fractals is the new dungeons, and if you don't like the differences between them, you have to accept it. I think like it's just not something that ArenaNet is really investing into, and I'm honest, they have to invest so much time. I don't even know if it's worth it, if that would even like make it really good. I'm not even sure if that's worth it because, like I said, it's a lot of time investment, and then I don't even know if a lot of players actually want that. You know, would the open world community, would the raiding community actually engage as a large part of it, of their time with dungeons if they like redid it? I don't know. Really, really hard to tell. Yeah, Spear Elementalist shines in open world when you like can hit a lot of targets. That is true. I would take they could make an amazing raid or maybe 5-man content by reworking Ara. The environment is all there and it's huge. So a big and very cool raid wing would be great. I think that would be awesome. Like making the Ara dungeon, so the last dungeon, the 8th dungeon, into, or not the dungeon, but also the whole like map and the whole storyline there into like a fractal or like a full-fledged raid. That would be so good. I don't know what kind of like patch or expansion that would actually be like they would actually do that in. So would they do that in like the next expansion if there is one, or would they do that in a big like content update that is like just coming at some point? I don't know. That would be very interesting. I would love that. But like I said, I have no clue if they actually have interest in using old content to make something new without binding it to an expansion that they can actually get sales from. I think it would be awesome, like really good for the game. But right now, it's for me, it seems like they are not really like concerned about that or don't have time for that. Sadly, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, new guild missions, the core game could have so much more cool stuff if they just revisited old stuff and made it better, made it more interesting, made more of it. But right now, I don't know. Seems like it's not their main concern. Yeah, Ara is really cool. It's probably my favorite environment in dungeons. Oh, my voice is dying, but yeah, I think that's one of the more unique looks and unique like types of like environment, and I think it would be awesome if they revisited that. But like I said, I think the problem with it is that a lot of times it's old, and I think it's easier for them to develop something new than to reuse old content. It seems really like paradoxical that they do that, but I think the old code or the legacy development of the core game is for them pretty challenging to revisit and redo. So I don't know. I think they in an ideal world they would do that all the time, but I have to be honest, I think if they could do that easily, they would already have done that. At least that's what I think. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I can totally understand that if you're coming from WoW, that you want to play something that is about like group content, easy to get into like dungeons without having to look for like 10 different or 9 other players. I definitely can see that. But the problem is, I think like it's a different game. You know, you have to accept the game for what it is. You can wish for it. I wish for it as well. But I think the main community is not really interested in that. And also ArenaNet isn't. So that's the main problem there. You have to accept the game for what it is, you know? And I hope you still like it, but I have to be realistic here. But I feel like we could gain from just having raw high numbers. That is true. I think like you could see that this balance patch is effectively just decreasing numbers, and it's still changing what the community feels about it. And I think you could make a pretty easy update for fractals, just increasing the numbers and giving you also more rewards. Maybe give a leaderboard or something like that. Just some somewhat easy additions that would actually help the player base. That would be awesome. I'm with you there. But like I said, I'm just seeing the other side as well, and I think ArenaNet is very busy with other stuff right now. So yeah, we will have to see. We will have to see what they are having ahead in for us. Ooh, they are attacking our tower. Yeah. Is Chandler Wilds worth buying right now for the builds I get with the spear for Elementalist or Ranger? I would say for Elementalist, no. For Ranger, yes. For Ranger, it's pretty good. Like Spear on Ranger is a pretty good weapon, yeah. I would say for Elementalist, it's one of the worst spears, yeah. So if you're only in for the spears, for those two classes, I think probably for Ranger, yes. For Elementalist, not really. But maybe after the buffs or nerfs, yeah. What is your favorite raid wing and encounter? My favorite raid wing overall is probably Wing 4. I think Wing 4 is the whole like setting is really nice. This dark prison style environment. The encounters are really like they have cool design. They are power crept like crazy, don't get me wrong, but just the original design is awesome. I really like this. I would say my most favorite encounter overall though is probably Lagos. I think that might be a hot take, but I really like Lagos. Lagos Twins is just from, I like encounters in raids that are not mechanically heavy. So they don't have a mechanic that you need to take care of or something like that, but they just have attacks. They have like 5 to 10 attacks that you need to avoid. Lagos is the closest to that, I would say, because they don't have that many mechanics that you need to do. It's more like you have to avoid the attacks that they do. And I think that's the most realistic situation. I like to have like a PvP world versus world scenario. I see an attack, I avoid it. I dodge it, I block it, whatever. And then comes another attack and another attack. I don't want to have artificial attacks in bosses. I can see why this makes it difficult and engaging, But I personally like the bosses the most that actually have attacks that matter, and not mechanics where you get I don't know, a skull over your head and you have to move out of your group. That's, in my opinion, a bit artificial. I think it's more interesting, that's why I like Lagos so much, where you actually get hit by a sword and you have to avoid this hit. You see the animation, you do this. I think that's way more interesting than having like just a random mechanic spawning. That's my take there, yeah. Is Scourge viable on this meta? So Scourge is good in like some certain PvE situations. In World versus World, it's a good like support and maybe even DPS back in Zergs. But for PvE, it's mostly like a support nowadays. It's not like you can play it as a very tanky healer, DPS rather. But I would say it's not the absolute best choice. Yeah. This is my typically live stream time, yes. Saturday morning for me. That's the typical live stream time right now. I wish I could stream more, but right now I'm very, very busy in real life with job and all that stuff. So maybe in the future, I kind of want to know the reasoning behind the balance patch. The way I see it is just based on what the highest DC bench is. Not everyone is able to reach a nice 90% of the benchmark. It's a change target at 1% of the community that impacts 99% of the community and seems backwards. I think the impact on the community is lower than you expect because it's like just 10% and or 15%. It's not really affecting a lot of players in a big way, but I agree that it's like a bit weird. But they just want to tune down the power level so that's like for future. It's the setup. It's all about setup. But I don't want to like excuse this patch. I think this patch has a lot of holes in it. I think it needed more buffs. It needed more reworks. It needed just more value put in. Right now the value is just nerfing numbers. I think I'm not really seeing the whole of it. Let's go there. There we go. That's just my opinion there. That's just my opinion. I'm very happy with what they are doing and all the decisions they took so far. I mean, I'm not saying, I actually would say that most of their decisions I actually understand and I think they are going in the right direction. For me, the last few balance patches were actually all pretty good. And not only balance patches, also like for example, I like the raid update. That was a good update for me. I always think the only issue that Arena that has, or the biggest issue at least, is that they don't push out enough of it. They should do more balance. They should do bigger like changes. They should do bigger like content update. They should do bigger feature updates. That's what I think is the biggest issue. If they would put out more, if they would put out like just more quantity, that would fix, in my opinion, a lot of issues. That's my opinion. Yeah. I don't get why Annette looks at Snowcross numbers at all when balancing. I think the thing, like I said, is like earlier in the stream I mentioned it. Like, yes, I agree. It's like almost nobody in the community, if you look at the whole picture, is reaching those numbers. I think that is like a completely fair statement. The problem is, what do you balance around then? What is the thing that you actually balance around? What is the thing that you say, okay, this needs a nerf, this needs a buff? Where do you get your numbers? What is the thing that you say, okay, this elementalist build needs a nerf, or this elementalist build is too weak and needs a buff? You need some kind of like objective thing to balance. And I'm not sure if like the benchmarks is the perfect thing. I'm pretty sure it's not. But we don't have any better like things, at least. Yeah, thanks, Revik. Really appreciate the Prime. Thanks a lot for the support. Hope you're enjoying the stream. I don't know. That's why I think like that. I think the goal of the update, like we have here in chat, like someone mentioned, I think that's completely correct. I think the goal of the update is that you make this patch being like the reviver of old content, to make the old content still stay relevant. It's not a patch that actually makes it so that every player is affected in a positive way. It's more about making the future of the content also reasonable to be replayed, and not make Veil Guardian and all the other older content completely irrelevant anymore. That is, I think, the goal of the patch. So don't look at the target demographic, look more at the target like content that is actually getting revived by this. That is the idea here. Not saying that is necessarily the only and the best way to do it, but I think that does the job somewhat. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Also, I wanted to say thank you from your YouTube content and the tier list videos you make. Thank you a lot. It helped me a lot getting back into the game. It helped me take a lot of decisions. Nice. Glad to help. I just really like tier lists. You know, if you have not noticed, if you don't know my channel on YouTube, I do a lot of tier list content. Like, I just really enjoy this. I like making like analytics of like the game, of the design, of the decisions and stuff like that. But I also like to spark discussion. Like, I like to have civilized discussion about topics. You know, you will notice that if you watch my YouTube channel over the course of time, I do balanced tier lists like rather frequently, every few months, to a specific topic, at least once a year to a specific topic, and I change my opinion. So if you write something in a comment and you say this statement is wrong, or this, like, I would not have put that in A tier, I would put it in S tier because it has a way better like use case in this case, and you actually have a good argument and you are civilized about it, I will actually change my opinion. You know, that's why I think it's so good to make tier lists and stuff like that. So I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thanks for the feedback. But yeah, that's just me, you know, not everybody likes it, but I really like to do that for sure. Welcome, Filthy, how are you doing? Nice to see you on stream as well. Very good. Yeah. Not just based on highest bench or average meta builds, you can do about 30 to 50% of SC benchmarks just by auto-tagging, and both those numbers is higher than during EOD. We are still past 15% more damage than we were doing during End of Dragons. If the changes do bring everything down 15 to 10%, it still feels easier than it did on launch. Yeah, I agree. Good point there, Alka. I think it's really important what they are doing, and I think the balance patch is definitely a good thing to do. I'm not saying it's a perfect patch. Like I said, we need more buffs or like reworks that would have been even better, but the tuning down is a good thing. I have a whole video pizza hut about the downstack mechanic in Guild Wars 2. I think the mechanic itself is good. I think it needs a bit of tuning in some states, and I think it's really cool to have downstate mechanics like in World vs. World, or no downstate weeks, for example, or have like infallible in PvE and hard encounters and challenge modes and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. So I think downstate adds a real safety net and it's fun. But it also at the same time is really nice to have some achievements and stuff that makes it more interesting if it's not there. Thanks, Fair Fight. Really appreciate the Prime. Thanks a lot for the support. Very nice. I would balance based on how hard it is to play versus yes, the highest possible numbers. So this is an interesting statement. I made a whole video, I think it was like 20 minutes or something, or even like that long, where I talk about what I think should be considered when you balance stuff. And the interesting part is there are so many things that you need to consider when you balance numbers. It's not only difficulty. It's one of the things, in my opinion, that needs to be taken care of. Is a build difficult? Then it gets more damage a bit more, in my opinion. Is a build ranged? It gets a little bit less damage than a melee build. Is it power-based? Then it gets a little bit less damage than a condition build, because a condition build needs ramp-up time. If a build has utility, it needs a bit less damage because it has the utility. Stuff like that needs to be taken into account. But there are so many things to consider that balancing in this game is horribly hard, and I think it's very hard in general in any game, because you always have to consider so many different things. And that's why I think it's, for me, I don't want to be in their shoes, in the developer's shoes, because they always have people that are upset with it. Always. There is no time in the game where you have like all the community being happy with the balance changes. There is always, like, they make this change to, I don't know, buff Antiquary, and then someone says, oh my god, they buff Antiquary and don't buff Daredevil. Why did they do that? Stuff like that. There's always someone unhappy. So I think it's like, at this point, you just have to accept that you have an idea as a developer and follow that idea, and hopefully most people will like it as well. Yeah. I would argue it would kill content for the average player. Wing 1 has seen more new players since it's easier to do, increase its fail rate, and it instantly kills it. I think, yes, if the fail rate would increase, but I think the DPS decrease doesn't make the fail rate go up. Don't forget, there is not only a power creep in terms of DPS, but there's also power creep in terms of healing, in terms of like utility and just ease of use. And I think that makes it, that did not get addressed in this patch at all. It's just the damage numbers going down. So in the end, it just makes it so that the time that you spend on a boss goes up by 10 to 15%. That's what it means. Yes, you are right. This makes the fail rate go up as well, because that makes it so that you are longer in the fight, means you have more time for arrow, sure. But it is way less than the case than, in my opinion, if they would nerf the healing output, or if they would buff the damage of the bosses or something like that. So that is just my take there. I think the patch with the nerfs is definitely justified. Welcome, Corex. Welcome, welcome. New player here, I've created 5 characters, but want one class with decent 4 elite skills to main and don't elite specs to main. Don't want to switch. What you guys would recommend for Warrior, Paragon, Luminary, Willbender? I think probably like Warrior is a bit less like flexible and with all the elite specs than Guardian. I think Guardian, Willbender, Luminary is probably better than your Warrior because it is just really good in all game modes. It's really flexible. You can play all the support roles. You can all play the DPS roles. Not saying Warrior is bad, just saying Guardian is more flexible overall and typically is also more ArenaNet's favorite child when it comes to balancing. So probably play that if you have no preference there. This overall nerf affects hardcore and speedrun casuals who do hardest content more than average raider player. Enraged timers aren't just relevant. Yeah, I'm with you there, Alka. I think Alka really like hits the nail on the head or something like that. Is that how you say it? I always forget the saying when I wanted to tell you. But yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, I would say. Yeah. A lot of people find and take advantage of patch exploits. That's always so. If there's a patch, there's always some kind of like bug or something that you can use, but they hopefully fix it. So yeah, I mean, that's just how it goes. Related to downstate, I've been against it since day one, since I joined the game. In competitive PvP and World vs. World at least, some of the abilities are so broken. I made a whole video about it and I actually am with you there. I think like nerfing World vs. World, specifically downstate, it was one of the main so to say, points in the video that I made. It's like something called like, should downstate get nerfed in PvE in general in Guild Wars 2. I made a whole video about that, and I think it's a good topic. I'm not sure if ArenaNet is listening to us, but it's a topic worth talking about for sure. Yeah. I think the balance patches in Guild Wars 2 is like you always have balance patches and you always have people that are not happy with it. I think that's the first thing that you have to accept. The problem is, I think balance patches have different goals. This balance patch specifically is not there to make players happy. Don't forget this. Normally, balance patches are there to make people happy, to play specs that are underused, to make specs that are overperforming, especially in competitive modes, bring them more in line, stuff like that. But this patch is there to make the future of the game still stand strong. If you let the power creep spiral out of control, the future of the game looks like you have 2 content pieces that are actually still worth playing in terms of like how challenging they are or how engaging they are, and the rest of the content is so trivial that there is no engagement necessary anymore. You can just hands off and the game does play it for you. So that's why this patch feels different than the others, because they really focus on making the game longevity live. That's the main thing that they are going for. Yeah. Luminary gets a big nerf with the balance patch, I would say. Even the healing Luminary or the healing output of Luminary. So that's definitely like, especially in World vs. World, it's also really hard. Like it gets a big nerf, but it's also really overperforming. You can see it what I'm playing right now. This build can upkeep permanent stability to its party, which is insane in competitive modes. So definitely, yeah, definitely needs adjustment, I would say. Well, this can also be set every decision taken, whatever happens, people will be understanding and people will be against it. Sure, I'm not saying that this is should be an argument against the patch or something. I just personally think it's important that you, as a player, try to understand what the reasoning behind the patch is. Even if you personally don't agree with why or how they do it or why they do it, you should try to understand what the goal is. And in my opinion, if you are a reasonable player, you should understand that this patch might hurt you with your specific build, but in the long run, that will make the game better or make the game more playable for players. You know, if you have almost no one playing old content, or the old content is just like irrelevant for the most part because it's just completely easy and no one does it anymore because it's not fun to play anymore. It's trivial and it's not fun in general. Like looking at raids, looking at like just general encounters, looking at world bosses. That is more hurtful for the longevity of the game than if you have a 10% damage nerf to your main build. That is my opinion there. Yeah. I play Ranger, especially Soul Beast, and this next patch doesn't affect the Ranger class too much. That is correct. Ranger is one of the least affected classes, and if you play Soul Beast, especially conditioned Soul Beast, you actually get literally zero changes. So that can be a positive if everything else gets nerfed, or if you wanted some changes, positive changes for you, some buffs or reworks, then that can be a negative as well. But I would say personally, it's definitely like some classes like Soul Beast, like Virtuoso, like Reaper, they actually are on the better end of the stick of the scale, but it's definitely more like a patch that changes things down, and if you're not affected by the downscaling, then you're probably already happy. You don't need to be affected. So Soul Beast probably one of the winners, so to say. I think they got us here. Pretty like clouding scenario here for us. Nice. Welcome, Mr. Lightning Storm. Thanks that you're watching my stream in that early morning. I think I'm pretty dead here. Maybe I can get into the tower. Nope. That's fine. Didn't their bleed damage trade get hit? Yes. I think they also nerfed the Condi trade as well, yeah. That is true, Cephas. I really enjoyed the positioning my Condi Soul Beast is in. No, I think I'm not sure. Let's check. I'm not sure actually if the Condition Soul Beast. Let's check. I think Condition Soul Beast didn't get hit at all. Let's check. I don't want to say anything wrong. Let's check. No, I think nothing decreased because this is twice as vicious. Reduces strike damage increase. It's just the strike damage increase. I think Soul Beast didn't get a single change. Condi Soul Beast is completely untouched. Completely untouched. There's this one. Yeah, this is true. Hidden Barbs got hit. That is true. That is actually sorry, forgot. This is a core ranger trait. That got nerfed. That means that you get a 13% bleeding damage reduction. You have also burning and poison. No, it's like, I don't know. I think you are getting nerfed, but it's noticeable, but probably less than a lot of other builds. So yeah, you're right. It's the bleeding. The bleeding got hit. Yes. Very good. Good that I checked. Yeah, the patch is linked in the... it should be linked in the Switch pinned comment in the chat. Yes. Welcome, Gosek. Welcome. Would you recommend crafting and selling legendary precursors or better waiting and selling the whole legendary? I think it depends what you want. You know, legendaries always require some time investment other than gold investment. So either map completion or the lamps or whatever you want to do. So there is always some time commitment to a legendary. So if you, or also karma and spirit shards, if you have that all lying around, then completely fine. Then I would say going for the legendary and have the patience is probably the better way. You get more money that way. But if you want to get just quick money, then it's better to sell the precursor because you don't have to invest more time in the account bound stuff. So it depends. For me, also coming from WoW, this game encourages its player base to play harder content only via legendaries or gold. Also to jump in difficulty from general open world and raid is too big. Big play is so huge in that regard, but maybe it misses something to emphasize people to get into it. Yeah, I agree. I think it's like Guild Wars 2 has a lot of cool systems that are just not perfect yet. And they don't iterate in it. For example, the quick play for raids. And we also don't have like insane amount of like... yeah, the hardcore endgame scene is just like... it's not like having enough pieces of the content that need to be like there to make it so that your WoW veterans, Final Fantasy veterans are actually really intrigued by it. I'm not saying it's bad. I think it's actually really good, the endgame of Guild Wars 2 in PvE. But it could have so much better tools and so much more. Yeah. The Berserker nerfs, I think they are all in line. I think that's okay. It will hurt a bit, but it's not the worst. Thanks a lot, Burry Burrows. Gifted 1 tier 1 sub to Alka. That's nice. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. And Alka will obviously also appreciate very much. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Oh my god, they got me. Shouldn't read chat while being caught off guard. Okay, I think I got out. That's good. Is there enough incentive to play experienced raids over training? I mean, it depends what you need as incentives. Let's talk about incentives in Guild Wars 2, you know? Oh my god. Let's talk about incentives in Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2, in my opinion, is a sandbox MMO more than it is something else. Because what is the incentives in Guild Wars 2 to do anything? You're not only talking about raids. It's either you have fun doing it, or it's you want to achieve something. So you set yourself a sandbox goal. So for example, you set yourself the goal getting this legendary. You set yourself the goal getting this title. You set yourself the goal of unlocking all the skins in the wardrobe. Something like that. But this is a self-made goal. So that means that if you don't have a goal yourself, then why would you play raids? What is in there that is actually interesting to you? It's not like in World of Warcraft or something where you want to get the best item level and you need to play raids to get it, at least somewhat. Or you want to get this specific mount skin, which you can only get from there. That's nowadays a bit better in Guild Wars 2, but it's still not even close to what it is in WoW. So Guild Wars 2 is more sandboxy. So you set yourself the goal. I want to get this cool looking raid armor. And then you have a goal. But it's not better than any like ascended gear that you could get from the Wizard's Vault. So that's a curse and a boon of the horizontal progression of Guild Wars 2. And that's why I think it's definitely an issue if you come from World of Warcraft and you expect like infinite like content that you can get from like just getting into raids, and you can get the best gear, you go for higher difficulty raids and you get more unlocks and stuff like that for your character and get better with your character and stuff like that. That's not the case in Guild Wars 2. It's really just for your personal achievement and personal like goals that you want to do it. And that's something that is really, really important. Nice. Thanks, Alka, for the bits. Let's talk about it. What is the bet? Would you take this bet? It's about loss aversion. It's a psychological concept that people feel like the pain of losing something roughly twice as strong as the pleasure of gaining the same amount. I mean, I think that's so like clear, crystal clear. You can see it with this patch directly. Like if they would like have the nerfs are felt so much more by a lot of players than the actual like how much it affects it. You know, it's like they could have done a 5% nerf instead of a 10% nerf. The people would still be very upset about it. Yeah, I mean that's I'm with you. Oh, the Veritasium there for sure, for sure. But I don't know what the bet was, to be honest. I don't know the bet. In the video, Derek Muller goes out on the street and asks people if they take a coin flip bet, risk $10 or 50-50 chance to win 20. Most people refuse, even though the odds are technically in their favor. It's interesting. I mean, I have to be honest. I can understand people saying no, because that just means that, like, I don't know. I can understand it, but I see the logic behind why you would actually try to take the bet there. I can see both sides. I always try to see both sides, but you know, I'm generally a less risk averse person, because just if you're a long time watcher of my channel, you know I did in Guild Wars 2 like open the 2000 Blackline keys. So I'm a bit risk averse in this game, because I just not in this game in general, because I just am unlucky. But I think in general, if you know the odds, you should probably play after the odds. You know, it's like in poker. If you have a straight flush and someone else is going all in, you should probably go with them. You know, that's just how the odds work. But yeah, I mean, interesting question for sure. You can win by not betting? Ah, that makes sense. That makes sense then, yeah. They could have said we've increased the health point of all the raid bosses by 15%. That would actually be very interesting. But the problem is, again, that would then lead to all the new raid bosses having the high health pools as well. But they're not only talking about raids though, they also talk about open worlds. They also talk about everything. And then it's easier to adjust the actual things that are played than the passive things that people are going to, because there are hundreds of bosses and enemies that you would have to adjust instead of nerfing down the numbers. I think that's just, yes, you're right, that would probably have made people less unhappy. Maybe, I guess. But it's definitely like understandable from the resource point of view, I would say. My favorite thing is maxed out EBG and a highly experienced commander. Time just flies by. Yeah, that is true. That is so true. Sadly, we don't have that. We have a very inexperienced commander. We don't even have one anymore. And we have some random people in our party here. So classic complete chaos on EBG here. Welcome, Shadens. Welcome, welcome. Hope you all had a nice day so far. So far the day is good. We talked almost exclusively about the upcoming balance patch apocalypse coming to Guild Wars 2. So exciting news yesterday in the evening for my time. So we will see if what they actually go through. Probably almost everything. I highly doubt they make any changes to it, but very exciting news. Very exciting. Is it mostly Visions of Eternity specs getting the hammer? No, actually not. It's I would say almost every spec getting hammer, like a big nerf hammer. There is like almost no exception to this rule. I think the only big winners of the big is relative, but like winners of the patch is Condition Virtuoso and probably Power Reaper. Those seem like the only specs that might actually get buffed. Everything else is pretty much like seeing like no changes. Yeah, in PvP and World vs. World you have some effects, but in PvE specifically you have almost exclusively like nerfs to everything. The damage should just go down. That's the main thing here. Yeah. Yeah. I think it depends heavily which time you play. So I was like there an hour ago on this map, and there was also not that much action. Now we have way more action going on. How did we actually kill them here? Like full cloud scenario against the Zerg, and they completely wiped. That's crazy. Yeah, that's just World vs. World. But yeah, I would say it heavily depends on the server you're on and of course the time that you play. So if there's prime time, you always get way more action going on than if you play in the middle of the night, for example. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, power, don't get me wrong. I don't know the actual numbers yet. So if Power Reaper goes up by a specific amount or if it's just the spec that gets the least nerfed. But I have to be honest, if you like say we have 36 specs and out of the 36 specs, 34 get like big nerfs, and you are the one spec or one of the two specs that actually don't get a nerf or like pretty much stay the same, then you can be happy. Like that's why I think like Reaper is, if you're a Power Reaper enjoyer specifically, you will like it. Like I would say this patch. I would say, not saying that it's like, I'm not saying that it's like guaranteed to get a buff. I have not mastered out. Oh my god. But it's definitely one of the winners of the patch. Yeah. Yeah, quick. In general, Herald is like, I think there are two things in the balance patch that I don't agree on at all. And one of them is Herald being like caught in the crossfire, like completely caught, completely destroyed in like Condition Herald specifically. It's just really like gone almost. It's like, it loses so much damage to like, just because for the sins of Condry, Conduit, and maybe Condi Renegade. Yeah, that is pretty crazy to me. But at the same time, we also have, in my opinion, really weird change, Catalyst. Boon DPS Catalyst and Boon Heal Catalyst getting nerfed. That is quite painful. That is very painful because they are like, getting the damage nerf is completely fine. But also nerfing the other thing, that is pretty, like the boon duration output, so much, that's pretty painful. That's painful, yeah. I've been playing Power for months now, disaster. Yeah, I mean, it's getting better after the patch, don't worry. No, the nerf is coming on the 14th of April, so it's like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, yeah, something like that. So it's quite a while away. So don't worry, it's not coming on Tuesday. Yeah. Been watching this for a while. Infused Terror, reactivating the skill to cast Terrify. No longer removes the damage reduction effect. That is a big change, yeah. The people will not see that in the beginning, but this is a big change, especially like for like tanking stuff in PvE. Like if you know there is a big hit incoming, you can like just use this as a fear effect and still get the damage reduction. You can of course also use it in competitive modes very well. This is a big Reaper buff. It doesn't like look on paper like much because it's not a numbers buff or something like that, but it's a functional buff that actually helps a lot. So that's definitely, that's a big buff. Yeah, like I said, Reaper is probably a winner of the patch. Yeah, it's just sad that Herald and Catalyst get like completely destroyed like that. Especially Herald, I'm really sad. Like Herald is not mentioned in the notes, but because of all the crossfire that they get for Conduit specifically, it's like Condi Herald. Power Herald is untouched, but Condi Herald is like, it's just gone. It's just gone. That's just crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I was hoping for Evoker, Quick Alacrity, Radius buff. I think in general, the Divisions of Eternity specs would have been like happy about Radius increases. So for example, like all the radii of the boon like output of Quick DPS or Alacrity DPS of Divisions of Eternity specs is generally lower than a lot of other specs. So I think increases to that, even if it's just small, would have helped, but I think there could also be some balance lever there, and I think that's okay. Like I said, this patch is more like of an adjustments patch than anything else. It's not really a big balance patch in my opinion. It's just like 10 to 15% of like shifting the meta down. It doesn't change the meta as a like what you play. You just have less damage on the specs that you already play, which is okay, but it's not very exciting for me. Yeah. I'm an ArenaNet partner, yes. So if you want to support me for no additional cost, if you purchase any expansion, you can use my referral link. And other than that, I just talk about the game and tell you all without any, like, so to say, holding back. I don't have to praise the game, so I'm always allowed to also talk negative about the game. So don't worry, don't worry. When can I see the upcoming patch? So the upcoming patch notes is linked in the pinned comment on Twitch. I'm pretty sure. Let me check, double check, but I think it should be still there. Yes, it's still there. On the pinned comment, it's still there. You can read it there. Very good, very good. Just read through the notes, some understandable nerfs, but some of the changes make me wonder if the balance team even play the game. Yeah, I mean, there's always something that you as a like player is like a bit like, why are they doing this? What is the goal? I always like without having, oh my god, I thought they like, how did they get me there? But yeah, for me as a player, I always say I have the benefit of the doubt to them. You know, I give them the benefit of the doubt and say they have a reason to do that I don't know about. But I agree, some of the changes, especially Herald and Catalyst, like I just mentioned a minute ago, those changes I cannot understand. Why they make something that is not like on paper needs the nerf, getting so hard nerfs without compensating for it. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah, I'm glad to hear for the newcomers. They will certainly enjoy this game. I would say so. I mean, if you like, I don't know if you mean that like ironically or something, but I think Guild Wars 2 is a game to be enjoyed for new players, like very much so. I think the game has a lot to offer, and I think the game has also like a really large amount of content that you can play because they make balance patches and changes like that, because it's a horizontal progression game. So I think if you're into like games like Guild Wars 2 with a sandbox style progression system, as soon as you reach 80 and have ascended gear, you pretty much have the gear spiral done. Thanks a lot, Tomian. Really appreciate it, Prime. Thanks a lot for the support. Then if you are done with the gear grind, so to say, which is not that big in Guild Wars 2, then you are like, you can get so much fun and time by just playing the game and setting yourself your own goals. Yeah, like going for full, like legendary, going for more achievements, going for map completion. That is even like, you don't have to have big goals, but this is the beauty of it. So Guild Wars 2 is a really nice game for new players, especially for casual players, but even for tryhards. Depends how like you set your own goals. But like we mentioned earlier, it's not a WoW or Final Fantasy if you talk about how much content they put out. So always have to mention this here as well. That's just how the game goes and how it is. One of those days, engineer turrets will get buffed. I don't know. I think that seems unlikely because they really are scared of like AFK farmers, and turret engineer is just one of the ones that is like very, very commonly used in AFK farming. I think Guild Wars 2 is like, it grows. In the last year, it grew a lot. Like it has a lot of new players, and it's just like the attention is there. And I hope it continues like that. Yeah, I really do. I really do. Not only because I'm a content creator, just also because I love the game and I think we need more players. I think the game deserves more attention. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, never know. You know, some people always say something like that, and I think it's a nice comment, and then they said it ironically, and then they flame me for like having such a positive vibe about the game. You know, it's always like, yeah, just saying. YouTube comments, for example, are really cringe sometimes. Yeah, Ritualist got hit quite a bit. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think they want to nerf power Harbinger and power Ritualist without nerfing power Reaper. That's the reason why they make changes like this. And I think they should have done that for Herald exactly the same. They should nerf condition Conduit and condition Renegade, for example, if you wanted to, but also buff a bit of like Herald a bit. But because everything goes down power, like Herald actually goes up a bit because it doesn't get hit at all. So I guess you can make that argument. Herald is also somewhat of a soft winner, power Herald at least. You could make the argument. Do you have tips for new healers and raids? I think start with the easy healers and the easy raids and just try to be confident and go in and try to heal them and just understand all the mechanics. I cannot give you tips in general to everything, but you can also watch more of my streams and stuff. I can always tell you what I'm doing when I'm playing raids and stuff, because I'm playing heal very often. But just get in there. You know, the easy ones are easy to get in. Which build do you recommend for Ranger if I want a power build, but also with a pet? I would say Untamed is the best option. Like, Untamed is really good as a power build with a pet. It's really, really strong. And you can also solo crazy good. Yeah. Yes, I'm from Germany. That is correct. Guild Wars 2 has a few features that they are here to boost your ego, like Mythic Plus, Rio Score, or yeah, I think they could be more prestige in Guild Wars 2. Like, prestige in Guild Wars 2 is a bit missing. I think they did a good job with the infallible title, with the leaderboards for raids, but I think they could do that for fractals. They could do it even for open world bosses and stuff like that. That would actually like make the game more exciting for players that are looking for some kind of prestige things to get, to grind, to achieve. Yeah, because right now it's like you barely have anything. Maybe some titles, maybe something like that. But that's pretty much it. And a lot of the casual community doesn't really care about those, I would say. Do you think there's a winner of this patch notes? Nah, I mean, probably like Conditioned Virtuoso, Power Reaper. Those seem like the winners, yeah, because they actually get buffed. Especially Conditioned Virtuoso gets like a, I don't know, 5% buff or something, which is, it's a buff in a patch of nerfs. It's a big winner, yeah, I would say. So those probably, maybe Spear on Elementalist. This is now a better weapon as like Scepter or Dagger and Sword, maybe, but I don't know. We will see. We will have to see. We will have to see. Yeah. I have a question. 2 days ago, I bought an expansion in Steam, but my original account was created 2012 in Arena, so I transferred now, and the expansion I bought doesn't work in game. You probably have to write support then. They typically supporting Guild Wars 2, the ArenaNet support is extremely helpful. So if you write them, you have some issues, then either they resolve the issues or they refund your money. So just write them a ticket, explain what the situation is. Of course, I cannot help you. I'm not like an employee, so I cannot change anything for you, but that's my recommendation. Write a ticket via the official page. You know, log in with your account and write them a ticket, and they will definitely help you. They are really, really, really helpful when it comes to stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, it will be interesting with the benchmarks after the patch, for sure. Will be a big, will be interesting to see how the benchmark develops. They can, of course, do already some mathing before, but will be more interesting to see the actual benchmarks. Yeah. Yeah, I can send the patch notes. Here are the patch notes. I will send them in the YouTube chat. If you haven't seen them already, just post it in the YouTube chat. In Twitch, it's linked in the pinned comment. Yeah, there's LCM, but there are only like 2 LCMs plus 1 really hard challenge mode of Harvest Temple. That is about it. So I guess you could make the argument those are the most challenging stuff and they have some stuff to grind. But in the end, it would be cool to have that like with every single harder content piece, but they are already starting doing it. So like the next, not the upcoming one in May, but the one in August has a legendary challenge mode, I think, for the last raid boss. So that will be exciting if you're into that kind of stuff. What ranger spec will be the Giga Chat after the nerfs? That is a good question. I think Untamed is probably the winner there from the ranger specs, because Untamed gets not that many nerfs. Like Untamed is pretty untouched. So if you like Untamed, this will probably be one of the best specs. Gale Shot is completely untouched as well, but I personally think Gale Shot needed a bit of usability buffs. I think Gale Shot is in PvE, has good damage, but it's very single target focused, and it has not the best like utility. I think Untamed is in a lot of cases just better. So I think that's why I think Untamed is probably the winner of the patch, but yeah, that's just my opinion. Yeah. Got another question if you have time to answer. I like to normally just play whatever I find fun in terms of weapons and class combination, even if not optimal. From what rank do you think will that be an issue in PvP? I think PvP is such a niche game mode in Guild Wars 2 that if you just play for fun anyways, for example, I do that. I don't care if I'm like in like platinum at 1700 rating, or if I'm in gold at 1300 rating. I just want to have fun. And so then it doesn't matter. Play what you like, you know? That's just how PvP works. You play what you like. If you don't grief your team, then that's good enough. I would say if you want to actually like get high rating, then it matters somewhat what you play. But you know, like I said, the community is so small in Guild Wars 2 PvP, the tryhard community that is, not the casual community, but the tryhard community, that there is not a single rank that I would say you need to play a meta build. You could get rank 1, I'm not joking, you could get rank 1 in Guild Wars 2 PvP if you played an off-meta build and you're just really skilled at it. That's how crazy it is. So don't worry about that. Just play what you like. Yeah. Yes, I'm currently playing World vs. World support Luminary. Whenever there are some allies around and we are doing some Zerg fighting, I think that's a really good build. Get a lot of loot boxes, it's really fun. It's, I don't know, just my go-to build right now. Yeah. I'm good. Welcome, Sikasa. Welcome. Glad you made it. Hope you're doing fine as well. Look at Condi Spectre, it's getting completely eviscerated for no reason. 40% nerf across the board for Scepter Dagger build and maybe 30% for Spear. I don't know if that's... Is it that much? Is it like really 40%? That seems like crazy. I don't know. I think that's too much. I don't see that. I think they have calculated before they made those changes. I'm pretty sure every single spec will get a 10 to 15% damage nerf if it's in the current meta builds. That's what I would be so surprised if they say Spectre gets a 40% nerf. What? I don't see that. Yeah. 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 So far doing that, I've done 5 wings this week. I'm doing great. Yes, I think like that's a good way of doing it. Doing 1 wing per day is pretty nice like progress for getting into raids and stuff like that. I think the best way, if you want the absolute best way of getting gold or like making the best use out of the dailies and raids and stuff, you would probably play raids in a way that you do all the raid bounties every day, and then on Sunday you do the missing things that you not have done yet. So for example, if tomorrow is Sunday and I have like missing 5 bosses, 6 bosses, or something that is not on rotation like Forged Steel, and you want to get all the LI, you want to get all the gold, you would do all of the missing ones on Sunday. That's pretty much like a very good way of doing it. That's how I do it typically. But yeah, I mean, you always have to do what you like to do. You know, some people don't like to play only one boss, then you can play the whole wing in one go, that's also fine. I think some wings, for example, wing 7, they are typically on rotation together, some of the parts. That's also really nice to do then. Yeah. But yeah, so I think overall you can summarize this patch as a patch that is like necessary, even though it doesn't feel great for a lot of players. Yeah. And if you're a casual player and watching this, like a player that plays open world, that plays a couple of hours per week, this is not a patch you should be concerned about. This is a patch that mostly affects tryhard people And even those people are not affected that much in a negative way, in my opinion. So don't be too upset about it. Like, don't think about this is a nerf. Oh my god, my favorite spec got nerfed. Think about it like this. It makes the game in a longevity way better. And yes, it's not perfect. I think they should have done reworks and buffs. I think that's really, really sad that they are not doing this. Like, really sad. I was really hoping for like an Vindicator, like rework, a Weaver buff or change. I was hoping for Herald buffs, stuff like that for sure. But I mean, I cannot change what we get. I accept it, I guess. So that's my summary of the patch, I would say. That, I mean, it depends. You know, if you look at the raid bounties, let's just look at the raid LFG right now. So for example, here, this group here says Wing 4, CM, no mechanics, DPS. They don't ask for any kill proof. So if you know the mechanics and you actually don't wipe the group, you're fine. Like, look at the most, like, I think this is one of the beauties of this new raid update, is that there are not that many, there are some KP here, there are some KP, but for example, there are some dailies and stuff like that, they don't care, you know, if you are decently, like, knowledgeable about the fight, you don't need to prove that you did it like 100 times already. At least for the groups that I joined, that's often the case, and we cleared in first try anyway. And it's not like I could not join the groups with the KP, I could, I just don't care. And I think you just have to, like, sometimes skip a group if they ask for KP because you don't want to be like toxic and join a group that you're not supposed to be in. But I think it's definitely like a good spot right now where it is with the KP and stuff like that. This game is hard to learn, and it's even harder when you can't decide the main. How is everyone doing, and how are you chilling with your main after patches? So I would say that's a good question. I think in Guild Wars 2 you should play what you enjoy the look of, the play of, the like fluidness, how fun it is to play to you, and don't care about changes and balancing and stuff like that. You know, there is always ups and downs. Some specs are better than others. Play the ones that you like, especially in PvE. Every single spec is really good, like every single spec. There's not a single spec that is like not worth playing. So I would say if you like a specific spec, play that, and if you don't like it anymore, play a different spec. Guild Wars 2 is really nice. I mean, I have so many character slots because I play so many different builds and different classes and all the time. So yeah, just play what you like. I think balance should not affect your decisions too much. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's Saiyan, that's actually really, I was surprised that they removed the weakening shroud boon removal like a couple of patches ago, and now they bring it back. It's just like, I don't know, what can't they decide, or did they see, okay, it's not necessary? It's very interesting for sure. It's very, very interesting that they do it like that. Yeah, I mean, just the balance team, I guess. Fireman will be meta main support again after the nerfs? Yeah, I think that might be true, at least for World vs. World, or like maybe Firebrand might be, maybe not meta, but maybe a very good go-to option as well. Yeah. I think it's super good that they give magnetite shards on strikes as well. I'm not a super big raider and can do it, but it's not most fun content for me. I prefer a little bit quicker strikes work well. Yeah, I think it's really nice. I think this update overall is a really good update for people that just play casually and want to slowly go into raids, or just play a couple of them. I think that's awesome. I think that's exactly what we needed. We needed more players engaging with the good content of raids. Yeah. You think Spear Condi Mechanist got hit hard? I think it's got hit pretty decently. Like all the specs, almost 5 to 15% damage nerfs. Condi Mech with Spear is one of those. Yeah. It's one of those. It is not like the biggest loser, but it's also not the biggest like winner, I would say. What class in Guild Wars 2 is the most balanced in your opinion? Oh, that's a tough one, Filthy. The most balance. That's a really tough one. The most balanced class. I don't know, it might be Ranger. It might be Ranger because Ranger has a lot of different builds, a lot of different use cases. They are all very close together. Yeah, maybe that would be my answer, but who knows? I don't know. I don't think there is one is probably the correct answer. Yeah, it always depends what you are looking for. There's always an overpowered or an underperforming one. Like it always depends on the situation, and I think that's just how it is here. Perfectly balanced is almost impossible to reach. My favorite jumping puzzle. I don't know. I'm really bad at jumping puzzles. I would not know. I did them once for the achievements just years ago. And now I have no clue about it anymore. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, the Lion's Arch one is pretty cool. That is a pretty cool one. It's also a very long one. It's one of the more challenging ones because it's so long. Yeah. That is a cool one. That's a cool one. Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to answer for sure. I think balancing is, in my opinion, an ideal world. Balancing is always about you have something that is really good at one thing, and you have the same thing being rather bad as something else, you know, the same build. So in an ideal world, you have balance via the encounter and the class design. So for example, if a specific encounter requires a lot of stability, that makes certain support builds better than others. But a different encounter makes other classes shine because you need a lot of condi clans, for example. And then it doesn't mean that one class is better than the other because it depends on the content that you actually do. So I think that would be in an ideal world, you would have balancing via multiple levers, like encounter design, class design, like synergy design, stuff like that. And it's really hard to balance like that, but I think in an ideal world you would do it because that would lead to like not an easy answer to this question. What is the best build right now? It always depends on the class, on the like situation, on the player. I think that would be easy, yeah, to answer, yeah. I feel like now PvE-wise, Guild Wars 2 has been the most balanced ever because you can really play whatever you like in most content. Yeah, I think so too. I think they do a great job in like not only in PvE. I even think in World vs. World they did a really good job with how well they do it. For example, with like, yeah, there might be, even in Zergs, might be some specs that are not as worthwhile playing as others, but there is not a single class that you cannot play. When Guild Wars 2 came out, if a thief was in like the Zerg, you like instantly like cried because it's just not a good class for Zerging. But now there's Spectre, which is a decent class for Zerging. And then you have Ranger, was also a very horrible class for Zerging. So I think even in World vs. World, you have now a decently nice balance. I think in PvE it's the best it's ever been, in my opinion, because like even every elite spec has a meta build that is really good to be played. And just like full stop. There's nothing that I would say is like bad about playing a certain build in PvE. You know, some people would say Scourge is bad because it only can play Condi DPS or healer. But I think it's still playable. You can still play a full Alacrity heal Scourge and almost everyone would be decently happy with having you because it can fill the role good. Or you can play Condi Scourge and it does nice DPS. Yeah, it might not be bursty, but it's still like decently good. I think the balance is actually quite good right now. Yeah. Of course, there is a certain meta in Zergs. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm really like, don't get me wrong here. I think there is a very rigid meta in World vs. World Zerging, and there's a very rigid meta in PvP, like high-end play. But I think every class can be played. That's the cool part. You know, in the beginning it was way worse. I agree that you don't want to see a Deadeye in a 50-person squad. Yes, you don't want that. But at least you can play Spectre and have a decent spot there. I think it's definitely better than it was before, like for sure. I think that's quite important. Thanks to a video on the offensive healers, I've made a Celestial Skirt and Spectre, but I feel like there's not enough guides that only focus on stability and Aegis timings to learn the role of healer, because of offensive healing is more about perfect timing for Aegis and stability and the role healing. I think it all comes with like more experience, but I try to do more of those guides in the future. I miss a bit of those guides because I think like Celestial Scourge and Celestial Spectre, since I made my guides on them, I did not have. There were a lot of changes since then, so I might redo them. And then I try to actually give you more showcases, more explanations on that as well. So don't worry, I will try to make that happen. But I think it comes with patience. Just playing more, you will understand when to use your skills. You know, it's like training your own skills by playing. I would say. For example, I think that I'll never heal CM fractals while not being perfect on stability timings. For example, first boss CM 96 needs to have multiple stacks of stability at the right moment. Yes and no. I mean, yes, it needs multiple stacks of stability, but if you time it correctly, then you don't need to. Yeah, you're right. The timing is key, of course, but I think you can actually play around it. Like I said, try to play a spec that you're comfortable with and look at when your healer provides it. You know, that's a good always. If you want to learn a different role, I think one of the best things you can do is playing the role that you're already comfortable in this content and try to actually look at the other player that fills the role and try to learn it. Of course, if you watch someone stream it, it's even better, or watch a video about it, and then you can learn it. But I think at some point you should jump in the cold water and try it yourself, because only then you can actually learn it. That's I can fully understand it. You know, I would say even if you understand tanking a specific boss and you have never done it, I think you are still missing the key piece of practice. So just get in there, you will get it done. It's not too hard. But yeah. Yeah, that is fair. That is fair. Fair point. I will try to include that in future videos. But yeah, I think that is also the end of today's stream. I enjoyed our talk and discussion about the balance patch. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thank you all for the support. Thanks for being here. And I hope to see you around. Be sure to check out my YouTube channel. I have some very spicy video coming up later today, like in a couple of hours or something like that. Be sure to check that one out. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. Take care. Have a very nice rest of the weekend. And I hope to see you around. Thanks for watching. See you.